No, change of heart. New year, new me. Carly, if you want to rip our audience a new asshole, you knock yourself. I'm not going to defend them anymore. I'm not going to protect them from you anymore. I'm no longer on their side. And honestly, if you want to know why, pro engineer, just look in the mirror. Pro engineer, hang on, not that one, that one. Go, come on. There we go. 6 seconds it took him. He had typed that before it even went to 7:30. He already had it typed, ready to go. The clock ticks over. Boom! Send. No more protecting. I am no longer defending my audience. Carly, you are off the leash. Have at him.
Well, firstly, I need to give a very serious, somber delivery to our crew tonight. So what have we got? We've got 175. I'm waiting for everyone else to join on. But guys, this is a very, very stern warning from me. Tonight is not the night to play the drinking game. You will die. You will die. I don't want your death on my conscience. Please refrain from drinking today.
Yeah. Well, look, a lot of people are ahead of us on this one. A lot of people made this comment. This comment has been coming over and over and over again. I can't wait for Topher's views on Venezuela. We'll all be drunk. Look, it's going to be a messy night. It's Amanda Rose has high hopes from you, Carly, this year. No pressure, but you gotta bring the spice this year. Yes, now Strapper, I'm not going to lie. My liver handed in its resignation earlier today. It just said I can't work under these conditions.
I just saw a couple of comments there, people saying, I can't see these comments. Just so you guys know, there's Topher's YouTube, there's the Oddcast YouTube, and the comments that we see is a combination of the two together. So if you don't see one, it's on the other chat, just so you know.
Yeah. So we get them all, everything, Facebook, X, all the YouTube channels, everything all get fed to us and we can grab them and put them on the screen. But look, I'm really glad to be back. How do you feel, Carly? Have you had a good break? Are you refreshed? Are you recharged? Are you ready to take on the world again?
Break? What break are you talking about? Do you understand that I have a boss as a total dictator who's just like,
look, can I just say I really appreciate you adding the tater on the end there, because look, either way, that would have been a valid description of me. No, look, I've had the whip cracked on you the whole time I've been away, me making you work, sing for your supper, dance monkey dance. But you do get a break in, what is it, 3 weeks time you're going to be away?
About that.
And you're going to be doing Oddcasts from Japan.
Yes, we're going exotic.
So, I mean, I don't know. Does Japan have decent internet? I don't know. It's a long way away, Carly. I don't know if technology has reached them yet.
Country, isn't it?
It must be. I mean, look, they put up with you for a while, so they've got low standards. We know that much. All right.
I did break one of their baths, so
I need to give a disclaimer because as of this morning, I went carnivore or keto, but mostly carnivore keto.
I love that you're already making caveats. It's like, well, actually,
no, because I'm going keto, but essentially, if I think in terms of carnivore, it's just easier for me. It's just so much simpler. It just cuts everything really clear. But there's a few things that aren't technically carnivore that I'm including just to make sure I know what my body needs, and there's some minerals and whatever. However, I am making an exception on day one, and I know that that's dangerous. But this is all the whiskey I have left. I haven't kept my stocks up because I knew this day was coming, and so I'm going to enjoy this tonight in celebration of and honor of Nicolas Maduro finally being deposed. I am also going to get a cigar, and actually I forgot to grab one before the show, so I'm going to head over there and grab a cigar in just a minute. But those of you that have been following me for a while, you will know that I have had a special cigar set aside for the fall of Nicolas Maduro. I was in Venezuela in 2015, yes, drink. And I came back from Venezuela and I had some cigars that I bought in Venezuela, and I kept one. The brand was Bolivar. And I kept that, and I said to myself, I will smoke this in celebration the day that Nicolas Maduro is kicked out of power. And I check on my cigars semi-regularly. You can store them long-term, but you got to keep an eye on them because they don't last forever. And unfortunately, about a year ago, this cigar started developing some significant cracks in the wrapper. So it was aging out. It was getting too far gone. And so I made the decision to smoke it. even though, because for all I knew, it was going to be another 10 years before Maduro was kicked out. So I made the decision to smoke it, and the flavor was already gone. It tasted like cardboard. It was already 3 or 4 years past when it should have been smoked. Cigars are salads. You're absolutely right. The real Eric Alistair. And so I'm going to grab a different cigar tonight, but in spirit tonight, I am smoking that cigar from Venezuela in celebration of the fall of Nicolas Maduro and the freeing of the Venezuelan people, quite frankly.
Yeah, I'm pretty
And I'll
excited
go and get
for
it now.
You can do that. I'm also, I've got really high hopes for 2026. Not that we're going to see a massive like change and everything's going to, we're going to have our happy ending. But what we are going to see is a lot of these regimes are crumbling. And I don't think they're as stable as people give them credit for. So I know that the regime in Cuba is quite volatile as well. Obviously, Iran's under significant pressure. And then Colombia as well. So there's a lot of destabilization, which doesn't necessarily mean that the people are at peace and everything goes back to perfect tomorrow, but it means that there's hope. And if there's anything that helps
Carly,
steer this on, it's hope.
I know you want to. I'm going to give you permission. I'm going to give you permission. You've got this whole like astrology thing. I don't know. The dildo is in Uranus and therefore something. I'm not quite sure how it all works. But there's something about change. There's something about change. Can you just run us through that?
Would you like me to recap? Okay. So look, I understand that a significant portion of Topher's audience are Christians, and this is nothing and no disrespect to Christians. But if you are someone that's interested in the planets and astrology and things like that, there is discussion around the planet Pluto, and it goes around the solar system 250 times every 250 years. Sorry, right. So the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was during the French Revolution and the American Revolution. And I honestly do think whether you're Christian, you're Buddhist, you're agnostic, whatever you are, your intuition can tell you when there is something in the air. And I think we all feel it. Maybe we can't all articulate it. But what astrology is referring to is a massive, monumental shift in collective consciousness. And you guys already can tell this is happening. We're going to go into detail about this. So I'm not saying that it's going to be like bayonets and guillotines, but there is going to be a significant uprising of the individual, even though Memdani wants us to celebrate the warmth of collectivism. There is a massive resurgence of agency and independence. And with that, you're kind of freeing yourselves from the shackles of mainstream media, of all the institutionalized propaganda. And I think what we're seeing now very clearly is even if they don't believe it, because, they don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, they don't want to be considered right-wing, we are all feeling that there is something off and that we're being gaslit, that our politicians aren't being truthful. And for those of you who've been playing along, this is not news to you, of course. But for the normies, there's going to be some very sore heads because they're going to crack open. And so the last time we saw this kind of monumental shift across the globe was literally during the French Revolution and the American Revolution. Whether you guys think this is hyperbole or not, I think now Venezuela, like I've been going down every rabbit hole. As you know, I am the biggest anti-socialist warrior there is. And the idea that we might see Cuba free in my lifetime is filling me with so much joy. And so I think destabilizing Venezuela, getting control of that oil, which we'll go into, is going to really hamstring the terrorists across the world. All that narco money is going to dry up. Hezbollah is going to go broke. Iran's under serious pressure from its own people. Is it possible we might be on the course to a bit of world peace? I don't know.
Well, there is going to be an awful lot of disruption in between now and that world peace. But I've been saying for a little while, I think definitely 10 years, but even within 5 years' time, life's going to be awesome. What we have to go through to get from where we are to there is going to be pretty intense. And I've been saying for a while, the pushback is on now. We are seeing this so clearly. Let's not forget that the election of Trump, or the re-election of Trump in particular, was a part of the pushback. And people say, oh, Trump's controlled opposition, blah, blah, blah. No, they never planned for Trump. He was not a part of the plans. Yes, he's rich. That doesn't mean he's in their club, right? There's rich people that hate each other's guts. They're not working together on stuff. It's the same as there's poor people that hate each other's guts. Not all poor people are united. Not all rich people are united. Trump is not one of them in that sense. that is part of this globalist club that just believes that rich people should be able to run the world, tell everybody else what to do, and everybody should just fall in line. He's not a member of that club. And his election was not meant to happen. Now, when they got rid of him the first time, they thought, we've seen off that threat, done and dusted. They got the COVID thing going on. That was the test for a lot of their compliance measures. That it was a precursor to digital IDs, all the QR codes, etc. And in their minds, they believed, and when I say they, I'm talking about the people that want to be at the head of the UN. I'm talking about the people that run the World Economic Forum. I'm talking about the people that have these globalist bodies where what they're doing is they're pushing power further and further upwards out of national borders and into international organizations. And then they're trying to jump ship and get a job in those international organizations. I'm talking about the likes of Kevin Rudd. I think Anthony Albanese is another one. Daniel Andrews was clearly another one. He tried to shovel as much power as possible across to China, and then he sucked up to China to try and get favors from them. What they're doing, they're not using their job to serve the people of their country or their state. They're using their job to carry favor with the people that they want their next job from. And they're selling out the people in their country and in their state to get that. That's who I'm talking about. When I talk about the they, that's who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They did not count on a Donald Trump. And the deeper we get now into 2026 and the deeper we get into his second term, the clearer it becomes that the world changed direction with the re-election of Donald Trump. If you just think about all of what's going on right now and imagine a Kamala Harris as the US president under the otherwise identical circumstances, how much more different is that? And does that send a shiver down your spine? Because I think it should.
I think that where we're at right now, right? Like, you guys know, I always pay attention to the comments, not the stupid ones, but like the normies, right? There are so many people right now that I think are frigid because they're not quite sure what to do anymore, right? Like, you've got people like yourself and me, and they might listen, but they'll never tell you that they're on board or anything. They're just observing from afar. And, you know, I'm referring to the silent majority, right? These guys have been hoodwinked, they've been gaslit, they've been indoctrinated for, like, honestly, 30 years or more. And what has happened, I mean, COVID was a shift for a lot of people, but it wasn't enough for many. But now when you've got a cost of living crisis and then you see things, and like I said, it's always these little grass fires, right? Like, recently we had the Annika Wells thing, we've got Karen, we've got a cost of living crisis, all that, like, there's tiny little things that is shifting that needle. And like we saw in COVID when they banned kids from the playgrounds, it's going to be something so silly, so random that you're like, wow, that was a thing. But what it is it's tension, right? Under so much tension, eventually the steel cables will collapse and boom, the bridge comes down. And that's where we're heading. And I think right now, like, it's not going to be years, it's months, because even looking at Elbow, right, post this Bondi massacre and the way he's conducted himself, now it's getting really, really hard to defend Elbow's position because all of these sports people, all of these thought leaders, people on the left and the right are all saying, no, we should definitely be having a royal commission. What's the hesitation here? And he comes out saying, oh, well, we'll just do an internal thing. People are like, no, that stinks. We can tell that stinks. Like, no, this is enough. But what I thought was really interesting, and this happened whilst you and I were on break, the Kane Turner documents came out from 30 years ago. Well, more than that now, the early 90s. And in there was just, I didn't go super deep into it, but maybe I will before Wednesday. There was discussion around the Victorian State Bank and how all of the debt was shifted onto the taxpayer, and they lied about that. And that's part of what pushed Victoria into economic destitution in the 90s. And then we had Kennett, who came in and started to privatize things, and he got a lot of flack for, cutting costs and things like that. We are in that exact same situation, but this time it's 10 times worse. And what you have is Daniel Andrews and now Jacinta Allen, who continually will just lie to your face in a way that's so, I want to say Machiavellian, but it's truly evil. They know they're lying. We know that they're lying, and they know that we know that they're lying. And yet this bold-faced lie gets propped up somewhat by the media, somewhat by a lot of these, so-called thought leaders in the public eye, but your public isn't buying it anymore. And I think there's a lot of people it's not so much politically homeless. It's more of a, where do I go for information? And the one thing that I will say, again, on astrology, for those who are interested, this is the rise of the individual. This is a reclamation for agency. And what you're going to see is a massive shift towards independent media. And what that means
Yeah.
is it's not that you're not biased, because everyone's biased. Anyone that's like
Everyone's biased.
altruistic and, oh, you know, I'm looking at things from both sides, bullshit. Just be honest.
Yeah.
You have your
Yeah.
bias, you have your vision on things, but what you're going to see is people going, look, this is how I feel, this is where I stand, this is what I'm into, and this is the way I'm personally interpreting it. And you're going to see a lot more of that, like people like Topher, people like myself. And
Yeah.
that's going to be now people go, well, hang on, maybe I should have a look at this and what do I think? Rather than
Yeah.
looking laterally and going, oh, what does everyone else think, right?
All right. I think you're right, but that kind of leads us into the Karen story that is developing very, very nicely. Are you happy to start there and get to Venezuela a little bit later?
Yes, but firstly, Merry Christmas, CJ, and Happy New Year, and thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, CJ. First super chat of 2026. Well done, thank you, CJ.
And whilst we're here, guys, don't forget you can sign up to Ko-fi and become a body.
Yep.
And yes,
do that.
That's a good one.
Do the thing.
Thing.
Yeah. All right. So there's a comment here that relates to all of what you just said, Carly, about independent media, the rise of independent media, people seeking the truth themselves and no longer trusting the voice on the TV just because it's the voice on the TV. And obviously governments are wary of that. This is exactly why we're seeing the efforts to impose a global censorship state. And we're going to come back to that language in just a minute, a global censorship state. Nathaniel Cosford says, did the December 27 changes happen? I haven't heard any or seen any difference. Nathaniel, I don't know if you're a regular follower or not. I don't recognize your name. I apologize if you are. I've covered this a couple of times. The December 27 changes were never going to be noticed because they just weren't that big of a deal. A lot of people were freaking out over not much, to be quite honest. In the grand scheme of things, they're important, but in terms of their immediate effect, it's going to be minimal. So essentially what happened on December 27 was a new code of conduct came in affecting search engines and a lot of this online stuff that isn't social media pages. In 6 months' time, that code will become binding. For the next 6 months, it's kind of a period of time for them to kind of figure it out. So it's in 6 months is when you're going to start to notice things. But essentially what it means is if you're not logged in and age verified, then safe search will be turned on by default and you won't be able to turn it off. So it's an extension, essentially. It's the Karen trying to close the loophole where with the search engines, etc., if you're not logged in, they don't have to verify your age. And she's kind of gone, oh, oops, that's a bit stupid. That's a big hole in my plans. So now they're stitching that up. So that's what's happened there. But yeah, Nathaniel, you're never going to notice a big difference. But that's not to say that there isn't a problem. There is a very, very big problem. And the problem is government trying to shut down our right to communicate, our right to talk to each other freely without their intervention.
I just want to add a little tangent in, if I may.
Tangent time. First one of 2026. Everybody join me. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time. All right, let's go, Carly. Make it a good one. Make it a good one.
Okay. So we've had the social media ban, and technically under 16s would be off it, right? Because it would work. Because whenever the government gets involved, that works, right?
Competence is assured.
What could go wrong? Well, it just so happens here in Victoria, the Socialist Republic of Australia, we had a teenage riot in the suburb of Mordialloc, where over 200 teenagers descended upon the local beach, had a brawl, and then went to the Mordialloc Woolies and ransacked it. 200 teenagers.
Can I just say, I see that as a win. That's 200 teenagers who weren't inside on their screens.
They weren't. But you know what they did do? They documented it and posted it all over to TikTok and Snapchat. So for a bunch of teenagers who are not on social media, they sure are on social media.
I'm pretty sure that Anthony Albanese said it's the law. So yeah. I think you need to check your sources, Carly.
Isn't it funny that, you know, you could put a law in and yet some people just won't comply? It's almost like this is hyperbole, and I'm being a bit facetious here, but it's almost like banning guns and machetes won't stop the criminals from having guns and machetes. I mean, it's crazy talk, I know, but
Carly, are you off your meds again? Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, sorry.
I just need you to come back to the real world. Come back to the real world, and I'm going to read to you a couple of highlights from some of the letters that have gone between the US Congress and Julie Inman Grant, the e-safety commissioner. Now, full disclosure, I'm no fan of Julie Inman Grant for reasons that I've covered many times in videos in the past, but I'm not alone. This is the thing that's kind of like, wow, this is unusual. Normally, I'm out on a limb on my own, voice in the wilderness kind of thing. Actually, it turns out this time I'm not alone, voice in the wilderness. And in fact, Representative Jim Jordan, who is the head of the Congress, the congressional majority in the United States, turns out he happens to be on the same page as me when it comes to Julie Inman Grant. Now, why does the US Congress matter? Well, it matters because Julie Inman Grant is an American citizen. And so when they jump, she has to say how high, but she hasn't been getting the memo. So this was an email, a letter that was sent on November 18th from the US government to our e-safety commissioner. Now, I've been saying for literally months, possibly over a year now, I'm not even sure, that Julie Inman Grant is starting a fight directly with the US government that she is not equipped to deal with. When she gets the fight that she's picking, she will have no idea what to do. Well, guess what? The fight has arrived. Now, I want you to put your bureaucrat hat on and realize that these sorts of letters from governments, from congresses, etc., are almost always very bureaucratic. They're very mealy-mouthed. They're very wordy. They're always using sort of double speak so that they can't get pinned down onto anything they actually said. That's how these things are normally written. Sorry?
I said they're deliberately obtuse.
They are deliberately obtuse. Now, with that in mind, have a listen to the language that is in this letter from Representative Jim Jordan to the e-safety commissioner. Dear Miss Inman Grant, the Committee on the Judiciary of the U.S. House of Representatives is conducting oversight of how and to what extent foreign laws, regulations, and judicial orders compel, coerce, or influence companies to censor speech in the United States, to develop effective legislation such as new statutes to ensure that foreign laws cannot silence Americans in the United States or severely burden American companies. The committee must first understand the nature of the harms imposed by these foreign laws. So the fact that they're harmful is already assumed. They're harms, right from the get-go. That's already been decided. As the Australian E-Safety Commissioner, you are the official primarily responsible for enforcing Australia's Online Safety Act, OSA, which imposes obligations on American companies and threatens speech of American citizens. Again, they've already made their mind up. The judgment is in. They've already decided that that's what this is. In addition, you have been working with US-based organizations and universities to facilitate and encourage cooperation with foreign censorship regimes, including the OSA. As such, we respectfully request, we'll come back to that, your testimony at a transcribed interview to inform the committee's oversight. Your expansive interpretation and enforcement of Australia's OSA, including your claim of extraterritorial jurisdiction to censor speech outside of Australia, directly threatens American speech. Global content takedown orders are concerning because they harm the free speech rights of those outside Australia's jurisdiction and set the precedent that other governments may do the same. For example, in 2024, your commission sought to compel X to remove content globally, arguing that its geo-blocking of its content was insufficient because Australians could use VPNs to access the content. Other censorship regimes, like the one in Brazil, have used similar justifications when ordering global takedowns of content and threatening fines for VPN use. Okay. So, one more sentence. The committee has also learned that you have colluded with pro-censorship entities in the United States to facilitate Australia's and other global censorship regimes. Okay. Absolutely calling a spade to a degree that you very rarely see out of any kind of bureaucracy, out of any kind of government organization. Absolutely pinning it on Julie Inman Grant personally. So when I said a year or so ago, she's picking a fight with the US government, and when I said more recently, when they were holding various hearings in the lead up to the introduction of the under-16 social media ban, and some of the social media companies didn't show up, Meta, Snapchat, and one other didn't show up. TikTok, was it? Didn't even bother to show up. And she had a hissy fit. We're going to come back to that a little bit later in the story as well. I said at the time, they are giving her the middle finger because they know that the American government has their back. That's what this looks like. This is them having her back. Guess what she said, Carly, in response? They gave her until the 2nd of December to appear and give testimony.
She didn't reply, did she?
She replied on the 2nd of December. And the funny thing is, she seemed to think that maybe they didn't have jurisdiction because they were outside of her, she's outside of their territory. which is kind of funny coming from somebody who is trying to censor a speech, including speech that is outside of her territory. Kind of a little bit of a funny little double standard there.
Well, I was going to say, if they don't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all, right?
100%. So I've got more on that, but my cigar's going to go out in a minute if I don't shut up for a couple of minutes.
Puff away, or just intermission.
That was me throwing you under the bus and trying to get you to. I was very optimistically trying to get you to say something intelligent. Clearly that was a bridge too far. All right. So that was Jim's first letter. I call him Jim because we're best buds. That was Representative Jim Jordan, the head of the House leader, I think they call him in the US. That was his first letter to Julie Inman Grant. Now, if my computer would behave, no comment from you, no comments from the peanut gallery about computers. Okay, so then we have this one. I'm just getting it up here. And when I say getting it up, I mean I'm preparing the PDF document in order to be visible, just in case anyone's wondering. We are there. Yeah, it's okay. We're there. We're there. La, la, la. Okay. It's worth the wait. Trust me. Hang on. No. There we go. All right. So this was the follow-up. So Julie Inman Grant replied via email on the 2nd. So the deadline was you have to come and appear before us by the 2nd. She sends an email on the 2nd, fluffing about the edges and then saying, I can't make the time to come to the US, was fundamentally the substance of her answer. So Jim Jordan sends another reply on December the 30th. And again, we need to keep in mind the way that language is used. Dear Ms. Inman Grant, the Committee on the Judiciary of the U.S. House of Representatives is conducting oversight of how and to what extent foreign laws, blah, blah, blah. This is the same kind of preamble. He's resetting the scene. We'll jump to the bottom of that paragraph. On December 2nd, 2025, you declined to testify, saying that you were not in a position to attend an interview. We write to reiterate our request for your voluntary testimony. Now, understand in bureaucratic language, he's not making a request for her to testify. He's making a request for her testimony to be voluntary rather than compelled. This is a bureaucratic way of saying, do you want to do this the easy way or are we going to do this the hard way? That's he's not actually giving her an option. This is do you want to do this the easy way or the hard way? He goes on, your testimony remains vital to the committee's oversight. We are concerned about the extraterritorial content moderation requirements, blah, blah, blah. Again, reiterates she's cooperating for a global censorship regime, reiterates a lot of these points. However, he then goes on from here for those that are reading on. Moreover, new documents indicate that eSafety harassed American companies ahead of the implementation of the social media minimum age, that's the under 16s ban, law. Emails and correspondence produced to the committee, in other words, handed over to us by the American tech companies who are saying, hey, American government, you said you were going to have our back. Here's the documents. Here's the ammunition you need in order to fight this fight. Emails and correspondence produced to the committee show that even before the law's effective date, eSafety directed American platforms to release public-facing, in other words, PR, compliance commitments based on an eSafety template. So basically, eSafety wrote out a template and said, hey, international companies that we don't actually have any real jurisdiction over, you are going to fill out this pro forma and release it as if it's your idea, as if that was the thing that you wanted to say. Based on the eSafety template, and demanded meetings with platforms that did not immediately comply. Similarly, the Communication Ministry, one of the Australian agencies responsible for the implementation of the SMMA, solicited SMMA talking points from each platform to demonstrate that they were working collaboratively with the government. In other words, they tried to run a kabuki theater. They tried to run a nice little PR piece where they were going to parade the tech companies around as compliant little lapdogs. And guess what? They said no. And Julie Inman Grant clearly chucked a hissy fit because they have characterized what she did in response as harassment. Where did she say that? Email and correspondence produced by the committee. They call it harassment somewhere. Anyway, I'm not going to go searching for it now, but they actually characterize this as harassment, that she's harassed the social media companies. Now, they also call out her lie about it not suiting her to get to the United States. Down here, clearly you are willing and able to return to the United States when it suits you. And they say that on the basis that she's gone to the United States for other things relating to the global censorship regime. So again, just calling bullshit. Like, they are not mucking around. They are not being nice here. Now, the US Supreme Court has recognized that Congress has the authority to do this. And finally, my favorite sentence, the committee may have to consider, if necessary, additional steps to obtain compliance with our request. Again, bureaucratic language, you're fucked, right? Do it or else. This is exactly the language that Julie Inman Grant uses in her job. It's about compliance. That was Albo's statement. Julie Inman Grant is all about do as I say. Now the shoe is on the other foot, and she's actually trapped herself. If she goes and testifies, she will be giving them the evidence and the ammunition of her own crimes. And if she doesn't go and testify, she can end up in prison for contempt because she's a US citizen, right? Any other Australian bureaucrat who wasn't a US citizen, this wouldn't work. But her specifically, she fucked up. And now she's got herself in the corner. And I don't see how she gets herself out of this one.
I think that what happens with all of these autocrats, these people who become drunk on their power, they overplay their hand. And I think, you know, you got to think of the rooms that Julie Inman Grant would be in, right? Like when she's surrounded by Albanese's cabinet and other, you know, academics who think the way she does. She's surrounded by leftists. She's surrounded by Democrats. And they're all there, you know, basically patting everyone on the back. I was going to say something way worse, but you know what I mean. And basically just, we've got him, we've got him. But the problem with the left, right, and this is something I keep seeing, it's becoming more and more prevalent, is that they never, ever consider what the other side might have because they're so overly confident because they have been successful mostly out of other people's acquiescence, not because they were right, not because they had the law on their side, but because most people just complied, whether it was out of fear or apathy or whatever. But now that there's this destabilization, which I keep referring to, they're realizing that they're not like, you know, the whole Trump thing in 2016, that took the wind out of their sails. They did not see that coming. They thought Hillary was a sure thing. So surely over time, like I say, they keep overplaying their hand. They keep thinking, no, we've got this. We've got it in the bag. And the way to win a debate is to not make sure that your argument's the best. It's to know how to argue your opposition's point, right? Like you
better
need
than they know it.
Yeah, you want to be arguing as your opposition. And so they don't do that. And we're seeing this right now, not to jump over onto Venezuela, but right now, all the lefties are now coming out swinging for Venezuela. But they forget literally like 18 months ago when Biden was still president, he was out there adding more sanctions. He even put a bounty on Maduro's head for 25 million. So, you know, and of course, the internet lives forever. All of this stuff is documented. So with someone like Karen, like all of her court cases that have all been thrown out, all of the crap that she's done, remember, there's a paper trail for all this because they have to pay. They have to have a paper trail. And we've seen you covered this 6 months ago, where she was using the resources of the e-safety office to keep tabs on people who were speaking bad about her specifically. Like talk about corruption of power. That's how all these people work. They're like, it's me, myself, what my career, my pension, my money, my salary, my position. And Julie Inman Grant has fallen victim for that. She believes her own hype. She thinks she has got the power of the world in her hands. And all I can think of, and you're going to love this, is my precious. That's all I can think about. It's my precious.
Leave the Gollum impersonations to me, please.
Go on then, please.
No. I'm not going to do one. I'm just saying, don't you do one.
No. You don't get to tell me to not do them and then not try and go on then. You've got the stage.
Yeah, I'm not drunk enough. Well, can we circle back? Can we circle back to this? I'm not drunk enough.
Gollum.
You're going to be bitterly disappointed because I am using this time to do something useful and productive. And I'm bringing up, so I'm taking a risk. This is a risk here because I've not actually watched this video, but this crossed my path earlier and I bookmarked it as something to watch later. So we all watch it together.
Yes.
Sorry?
Go. I was going to say, I've got a bunch of these videos saved, so go for it.
Yeah. So this is apparently a demonstration of what the Democrats were saying about Venezuela, amongst other countries, in 2019. Let's go.
Pattern, while U.S. public
hear
support
that?
for Venezuela's self-declared interim president Juan Guaido seems to have diminished, strongman Nicolas Maduro is still in power as Russia's support for him remains steadfast,
Good
sending
internet
a
you got.
message to the world of America in retreat and Vladimir Putin filling the void. And it's remarkable because Vladimir Putin isn't even that.
All right, that's that. I forgot to plug into my hardwired internet. We're on my crappy Wi-Fi. That's why it keeps on hesitating.
I've
Yes.
got one for you.
Okay.
Hang on. This is what's her name? Kerry John Pierre. Oh, what's her name? KJP. I'm terrible.
Yeah, John Pierre, Katie John Pierre. No,
Korea. Who knows?
yes,
Who cares?
yeah, Corinne, whatever it is. Yeah.
Why is it not showing on our thing? Excuse me. Yeah. Hello? Oh.
Well, now you're providing us. Oh, wow. This is the best entertainment ever. Carly's not even on the screen anymore. I didn't do that. I promise everybody. I did not do that. That was all you.
Why can't I share my thing? There. Ah, thank you. God.
All right.
Lord. All right. I'll try and make this bigger.
Quickly turn to Venezuela, where Maduro once again demonstrated his complete disregard for democratic norms and proceeded with his illegitimate inauguration. As President Biden emphasized during his meeting with President-elect Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia on Monday, January 6, we believe that it is essential that the will of the Venezuelan people is respected. In coordination with our partners, we've given Maduro and his representatives every opportunity to restore democracy, but they haven't. So today we are building on all of our previous actions and taking further major actions. We announced new sanctions on key Maduro-aligned officials as a part of our efforts to hold them accountable, and we imposed more visa restrictions totaling nearly 2,000 individuals. We also increased the reward amount to $25 million for Nicolas Maduro and his so-called Minister of Interior as part of the Department of State's Narcotics Rewards Program. Quickly.
There you go.
What was that?
Okay. So no, I can tell you what that was. I'll show you. Here's one I prepared earlier. This is what that was.
Or else.
Or else what?
Or else we will be very, very angry with you. And we will write you a letter telling you how angry we are.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what that was. That's what that was. That is who Biden was. We will write you a letter telling you how angry we are. That's it.
Can I just say something about the Venezuela thing? This is the thing that like grinds my gears more than anything. I put a reel up before, and I'm going to play it because I think I made a really good point. I think you'll be proud. But what I cannot stand is everyone speaking on behalf of Venezuela. And when the Venezuelans are saying, no, we're happy, they're like, no, you're not. We'll tell you when you're happy. I can't stand it. And like, it didn't take long for the Victorian socialists, that's Purple Pingers, to organize a protest, to return Maduro back to power. Like, I can't. I just, what? No, you know what? I'm just going to put this out there. It's 2026. I am almost 40. I need to look after my blood pressure, keep the cortisol down. And so rather than going full like 10,000 billion Scoville, when I just pull this face, I'm sick. All right.
No, your deal is not acceptable. I want the spicy Carls. That face, that just looks too much like a resting bitch face from a hardcore fourth wave feminist. It's indistinguishable. Yeah, sorry, not good enough. Not good enough.
Like,
no, that's right.
Has anyone seen an Abby Chatfield reel? Like, surely she's put something up by now. But what I can't stand, right, is can I play you the reel? Because I say it in the reel, and I say it way better than I can say right now.
Yeah, sure.
Let me pull
go.
Okay, hang on a second. Because this is the shit this is where we need to push back. And in 2026, I will say this before I play it. all gloves are off. I am no longer dependent on clients for income. I'm no longer taking on client work. So I am a free agent. So if you thought I was unhinged last year, look out. Like, I don't care anymore. I'm saying the unpopular thing. Call me Islamophobic, call me racist, whatever. Now is the time for truth telling. It's not going to get me in trouble. I'm just going to say it exactly as it is. And I think we all need to kind of take that and run with it. So I'm going to play this. Yeah. I'll play it from the start. And if I go, there we go. Of socialism when someone else is starving from it, and calling Trump a dictator and Maduro a president when he lost the last election and refused to give up power is a pretty ironic place to start protesting from. So let's talk about it. When we discuss Venezuela, it's not some cute left versus right, my team versus your team thing. This is pro-human versus anti-human. So let's rewind. A country that once had one of the highest standards of living in Latin America was driven into the ground by the very ideology Western activists are now romanticizing. They repost slogans about late-stage capitalism whilst Venezuelans are scavenging through garbage to eat for their survival. Under Chavez and then Maduro, the regime seized industries, gutted property rights, and turned the oil sector into a political toy. Hyperinflation wiped out savings, salaries became worthless in weeks, and hospitals ran out of basic medicine. Venezuelans lost so much weight from hunger that they started calling it the Maduro diet. That's the lived reality of the revolution that gets turned into an aesthetic by woke idiots. Today, over 80% of the country lives in poverty. Nearly 8 million people, almost a quarter of the population, have fled. Many risk rape, extortion, and death crossing the Darien Gap, one of the most dangerous migration routes on the planet, just for the chance to start again. And whilst they're walking through the jungle with their children on their backs, Western activists post hands off Venezuela like it's some kind of clever moral stance. So let's talk about oil, shall we? Under Maduro, Venezuela didn't just become a failed petro state, it became a narco state. Maduro's own nephews were convicted of cocaine trafficking and eventually pardoned by Biden. Narco money flows through networks, cartels, corrupt officials, and yes, groups designated as terrorists in the West, including organizations like Hezbollah. Drugs move north, money moves back, and weapons move in the shadows. And that destabilizes entire regions, and it's the Venezuelans who suffer. The same people who insist that violence is never the answer are effectively saying that Venezuelans should somehow magically overthrow a heavily armed, cartel-linked, foreign-backed regime with what? Some TikToks? When your people are disarmed and your courts are corrupted and your elections are rigged and your protests are met with bullets, external pressure is not some optional extra. It's often the last remaining lever. Western ideologues don't see that because they don't have to. They've never watched their currency evaporate in real time. They've never wondered if the electricity will stay on or if the doctor will have any anesthetic or if there'll be anything to eat tonight. They cosplay revolution whilst real people are bleeding for it. So no, this isn't just about oil. It's about a regime that looted a nation and turned it into a pipeline for drugs and dirty money and helped fuel the very criminal and militant networks that keep other civilians around the world unsafe. It's about anti-Western activists who are so desperate to oppose the West that they end up running interference for tyrants, as long as those tyrants tick their right ideological box. At some point, the question becomes brutally simple. Are you pro-human, willing to put real people's lives above your aesthetic, your theory, and your online identity? Or are you so committed to your ideology that you're comfortable sacrificing other people's freedoms and futures for it?
All right. Before you say anything else, Carly, tell me honestly, honest answers only. How badly did you want to say aesthetic instead? How much was it? It was trying to come out of you.
No, but you know what I did do? I tripped over the word anesthetic like 7 times. No. Oh! You do that? Like, for those who don't know,
I do it. Yeah, 100%.
I have a script. Like, I can't commit that to memory, but I get to words and I'm like, bleh.
Yeah. So I used to have that problem, and this is why I developed the technique that I use. Should we let our oddies behind the curtain a little bit on my little trick? Or is that just like too much proprietary information? All right.
No.
So people have asked, why do I have the earbuds in if I'm using a microphone here? What I do is I write my script, because I used to have exactly the problem that Carly's talking about. I'd write my script, I'd memorize it, and then it's just something, once you say it wrong one time, you get stuck on it. You have to do 7 takes before you finally force your way through it. I have exactly the same problem. So what I do is I write my script and I read it, and I simply record it into my phone while I'm reading it off the screen. Then I play that audio back into my own ears. So when I'm looking at the camera and I'm talking, I'm not reading a teleprompter, but I'm also not remembering, which means I can be fully engaged with the camera. I can really actually be talking to you as someone who is as a human being, rather than talking to you like you're a camera and I'm disconnected because I'm reading, or I'm in the back of my mind because I'm remembering. So I've literally got my script just playing for me in my ears as I go. And as a result, I can do 20-minute videos in a single take. And it actually saves me time in the end, because I don't have to do all the editing. Oh, well, I mean, I've got an editor now, but I didn't have to do all the editing afterwards because it was clean. It was all done in one. But yes, that problem is a universal problem. Everyone's got it. And that was my solution to it.
I haven't tried your way yet. I will try it, because what I do is I do have a teleprompter. I have a proper one, and I put my good camera behind it. But the problem with that is I get the possum eyes, and you can see my eyes doing this. I was like, that looks terrible. And then in CapCut, so I was going to say, on your phone, CapCut has a teleprompter. So if I film with my phone, I'm looking basically at the camera, looking at the teleprompter. But there's moments where you see my eyes go, and I hate it. I can't stand it. So I have to try your way.
As a photographer, you'll appreciate this. Before I'd met you, I had a headshot photographer that did my stuff back when I was trying to do acting and so forth. And we came across something by accident. He was filming, and it was with the old DSLRs, not with the mirrorless cameras now, with the DSLRs. And he just had this kind of thing as he was working. He'd have the camera and he'd look, he'd do this, right? And he'd sort of frame up, and he'd look, and he just had that thing. What would happen is every time he moved his head away from the viewfinder, I would get a white spot from the inside of the lens, light coming back through the other way. And what I did was I shifted my focus from the glass at the front of the lens to that white spot. So I literally looked that much deeper into the camera. Yeah. And it was about 10 minutes later, he was taking shots. He goes, what are you doing with, like, how do you look like you're just staring into my soul? I'm like, well, I'm looking at the white dot. And he's like, what do you mean? And we had to talk it through. So we both understood what I was talking about. What we realized, of course, was that's where the mirror is, which is much closer to where the sensor is, which means that my eyes were actually, it was like I was looking you in the eye, rather than looking a few inches in front of you. And just that little difference made such a big difference to my headshots. Not that they're amazing, but they were a big improvement on what they'd been on the moments before. And so for me, that's when I realized I can't be looking almost at the camera, and I can't be looking at the camera, but in the back of my head thinking about something else. I have to be engaged. I have to be with you. We have to be talking to each other as though we're live in the room. And so that's why I came up with the audio thing was I've got to do something that liberates my mind and my eyes, so I can just be focused on you when I talk to you.
Well, Duncan said here to put one word per line and scroll faster. I think also it's like the proximity to you. Like it's normally, like about a hand away from me. So I guess you can see me doing that. But like the whole editing thing, the more you're like, bleh, 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 it just adds so much.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
Very annoying.
All right. Can we get back to Venezuela? I want to get to this comment by Pro Engineer.
Yes.
Because you're absolutely spot on. All the TDS, all the Venezuelans are celebrating. And I want to blast through a couple of stories from my week in Venezuela. Not the old guy in the basement. I've told that story enough times. But I want to blast really quickly through a couple of stories just to verify what you just said in your reel, Carly. Because I've seen it with my own eyes. We can all see it because people have gone in and photographed and documented and everything. But I've seen it with my own eyes. Couple of quick stories. I've seen grown men in suits getting out of public transport on their way home from the office and then rifling through dumpsters trying to find food to take home for the family. And these were the people with jobs, right? These are the people with jobs. These aren't the people who are unemployed. I went to a pro-Maduro rally in the city. I have told this story before, where through a translator, I was talking to the locals there, and I made it very clear that I was an Australian, and I never said it, but I made out like I was all on their side and kept it all happy. And he told me how grateful he was to Nicolas Maduro and to socialism for the free T-shirt that he got. They were all lined up to get this free T-shirt at a little trestle table. And he told me how grateful he was because without the government, he couldn't afford to buy his own T-shirt. Right? So socialism had made him so poor, it had literally stolen the shirt off his back. But he was so indoctrinated that he thought the government was giving him a shirt, not taking the shirt off his back. I was there for a wedding. And the family that was getting married were actually very wealthy, even by international standards, quite wealthy, but certainly by Venezuelan standards, they were ridiculously, fabulously wealthy. Despite that, the family had begun planning 3 months before the wedding to have the ingredients for the cake. And they had multiple people that they paid because they were a wealthy family. They would pay them to go and stand in line from about 2 o'clock in the morning. So they were near the front of the line at the local grocery stores so that when the doors opened, they would be one of the first people in the hope that they'd be lucky that time and they might get some butter or some flour. And then they had to store that safely and not get weevils and anything else for long enough. And then at the right time, they had to start trying to source eggs and everything else so that they could have a wedding cake. 3 months of planning. And this is a rich family to get a wedding cake. Last one. One of the people that I met there later told me a story. His daughter became pregnant. And if you need surgery in Venezuela, they are going to use secondhand scalpels because I don't have any new ones. They are going to use secondhand bandages that they've washed in unsanitary water because that's all they've got. They are not going to have any form of painkiller. Nothing. Nada. Zip. We're going back to American Civil War era healthcare. That's what we're talking about here. And they were sterilizing scalpels using cigarette lighters. Like that's what they have to do just to try and have any level of sanitation. So when his daughter became pregnant, it was her first child. He was concerned that if she needed a C-section, she would die, which is unfortunately a very high probability. So he literally sold everything he had bar the house, sold the furniture out of the house, all of his clothing, everything else. Then he embarked on a 3-week journey to the border with Colombia because the terrain is bad. The buses and public transport is almost non-existent. And so between a couple of buses and walking, he made it to the border with Colombia, where he found a smuggler, handed over his entire life's worth to a smuggler who gave him nothing more than a promise that he would come back with medical supplies. Waited for a few days, and the smuggler returned with a large package filled with all kinds of things, bandages, scalpels, various anesthetics, antibiotics, and apparently did a really good job. Like this smuggler apparently was one of the good ones. He delivered. He delivered on that promise. And this guy, having sold everything bar the family home, took that back with him so that he knew that his daughter would get medical care when she gave birth to his grandkid, right? That's the reality of the socialist paradise that all of these fucking Trump derangement syndrome assholes are defending when they want to tell me that Trump did the wrong thing to get rid of Nicolas Maduro. It's a living hell. That's what it actually is in practice. And so, do I have some questions and concerns about the rule of law, etc.? Yes, I do. But I'm going to put on your hat with your mate Bukele, right? And say, you know what? Sometimes some situations are so bad that you actually just need to take some action and do something for the sake of saving an enormous number of lives.
That's actually been the best way for me to diffuse arguments I'm having with people who lean left or who adopt these thinking points that are put out by, academics, thought leaders, public figures that are anti-West, right? When people like the first pushback I had about Venezuela was like, oh, but it's breaking international law. And Ben Shapiro said this better than I can, but fuck international law. I'm sorry, but international law is only ever discussed in boardrooms in very safe, secure areas by people with very safe, secure incomes, usually a lot of wealth. The people who actually have to deal with the repercussions of international law are the Venezuelans who live the way you said. And I have no time for anyone who is in a comfy position, whether you're in the government or you're some Westerner sitting right now with a fridge full of food and your iPhone talking about all of this ideology as if it's a fucking utopia. The only thing I care about is reality. And the reality is for Venezuela, for the last 25 years, they have been living in destitution, in poverty, and they are suffering. And so I'm sorry if an international law has to be broken to relieve that suffering of 31 million people. That to me is something I can live with. My conscience is clear. I am so done. And I know you and I butt heads over this stuff occasionally, but I'm so done with the privileged class discussing everything from this detached ideological viewpoint. All I care about are the people who are on the streets of Caracas right now, going through garbage to secure some food for tonight. I care about those people. And until those people are at the fucking table having this discussion, get out of here. No time for you. Do not care.
All right.
Sorry.
Couple of comments that I want to pick up on here because this is representative of what a lot of people are thinking. So this is John Ilbich, I don't know.
Little bit.
Tofu, you're a goose. It's about oil and silver. Now, you're absolutely right. It's about oil. And in fact, the video that I've already recorded that is getting released tomorrow that goes on a deep dive about exactly the role that Venezuelan oil has played in the black oil industry in partnership with Iran and Russia. Watch my video tomorrow if you want to deep dive on that, and why Venezuela is such an important linchpin in all of that. It is absolutely about oil. And I say it point blank. Is this about oil? Yes, 100% it is. But more than one thing can be true at once. We talk about this all the time on this podcast. Trump has made his move specifically to break up the rise of black market oil, specifically to counter the rise of BRICS and the petro yuan. He's trying to make sure that trading in oil continues in US dollars so that the US dollar remains the petrodollar, so that it remains the world's reserve currency, so that he doesn't have a terrible economic collapse, because without the petrodollar, the US economy is kind of up the creek, right? Is it about oil? 100% it is. But can we also celebrate the end of that kind of suffering for the people that have lived and suffered under Maduro? Yes, we can. One more thing on the oil before I move on to the next comment. America's in there for the oil, 100%. Why do you think China and Russia were in there? Why do you think Iran was trading with? It was always about the oil from everyone, right? This is one of the most oil-rich countries in the world. Everyone's their friend for the oil. America is not uniquely evil because they want the oil.
I will say on that, sorry, regarding the oil, who better to have it? The US or Iran or China or Putin, right? Like this is the part where people just show their hypocrisy, because they're like, oh, it's about the oil. I'm like, okay, cool. Do you think the Venezuelans are benefiting from their own oil? Of course they're not. Yeah. They've had access to their own oil for the last 25 years. And look at the economic disaster. Venezuela had control of their oil. It's led to poverty. It's led to 82% living below the poverty line.
Okay, so a lot of people turn around and say, oh, but it was the sanctions, right? And there was, in fact, I'll just scroll back here because there was someone who literally said that. Why is
that's their favorite one. You mean the sanctions put on by Obama? They don't talk about who did that, do they?
No. So sanctions have been on for a while, all right? Let me get rid of that one. Why is my computer running so slow? There was a comment here about, anyway, I can't find it, but someone said, it was sanctions that made it what they are. No, it was Hugo Chavez bringing in the socialist revolution that made them what they are. Sanctions began to creep in when Venezuela began to cause problems for its neighboring countries and on global markets because of its misbehavior.
Human rights people.
Breaching human rights of their people, but also getting involved in narcotics. Because as socialist countries run out of money, especially in Central and South American countries, they turn to the drug trade. There's a reason why the drug trade is so prolific. It's because the government doesn't really want to stop it. And in the case of places like Venezuela, the government is the one that's behind it. It's literally true that Venezuela was a narco state. They were balancing their budget with black market oil, and you can complain about the sanctions all you want, but the other thing they were using was the narcotics trade. So
can we just talk about the narcotics for a second? Because I know everyone's getting caught up on the oil. What you're not looking at and what everyone refuses to pay attention to is that all of the drugs, or the cocaine specifically, is coming out of Colombia, right? And Venezuela is the carrier pigeon. Venezuela is using their own government, their government planes, their own military to push that shit into the US. They are using it to funnel the money. And what happens when those drugs go to the US? It enriches the people at the top of the cartel. Venezuela and Maduro are essentially a huge drug cartel. That's what they are.
Yes.
Maduro's 100%. Own nephews were convicted of cocaine trafficking in the US and jailed and then pardoned by Biden in the return of some US prisoners. This runs deep. His own nephews. What do you think? He's not at the top of it? And the problem with this is twofold, right? We talk about a drug crisis in the US. That's one thing. We talk about terrorism. But no one wants to have the very clear conversation of there's a bunch of pretty bad dudes that are getting away with shit because people want to go, oh, it's the Rothschilds. Oh, it's oil. Oh, it's this. Two things can be true at the same time. Of course, it's about oil. No one's fucking suffering under any disillusion that it's not about oil. The key is who controls the oil? The terrorists or the people who resemble some kind of Western democracy? Now, you can argue whatever you want to say about Trump. I don't care. All I know is I don't want Iran taking that oil. I don't know about you guys. I'm not keen on an Islamic caliphate in the US or fucking Australia. And this is the thing. This is a nuanced discussion. You can't just go, oh, it was the sanctions. Oh, it's the Rothschild bank, because they don't have a central bank or it's not connected by whatever. These are all distractions. These are all distractions, and you guys get caught up on it. Meanwhile, people fucking die, right? Like, it's really easy. And I've seen it in the comments, and you said I could go hard on the audience, so I'm going to go hard.
Yeah,
You guys are sitting in the comfort of your fucking house, on your phone, watching this on your big TV. You got a fridge full of food. You got a belly full of food. It's really easy to fire off comments around sanctions and oil and fucking whatever else you want to say. You're not the one that's going hungry tonight. You're not the one that's going to be shot on the street by your own fucking government. You're not the one whose government are using military trucks to drive over protesters. You're not the one that has to worry if you're about to give birth, if you're going to fucking die from an infection. You don't know what that feels like. How dare you have the audacity to feel like you get to have a fucking say? You don't. Every one of us, you and I included, we're speculating. We're comfortable. We are okay. The people who aren't, the people of Yemen, the people of Syria, the people of Venezuela, the people of Cuba, the people of Colombia, the people of Somalia, the people of Sudan. I can keep going, right? You want to sit here and argue fucking politics all day. What about the people who are being fucking slaughtered by their governments while we're all arguing with each other? They're the people who are the collateral damage in this. So it's really easy to get on your fucking high horse and be all sanctimonious. But reality is people are still fucking dying, and nothing that you say is preventing that. I'm so done. I'm sorry. I'm so done with these discussions about, oh, what about this? What about this? Ideology be damned. It's time for some action. And I don't necessarily condone every single thing that Trump does. But the fact that he finally fucking did something, hands up, like fucking great. I'm sorry.
All right. I'll give you about a 10,000 on the Scoville scale, which is that's pretty spicy.
My microphone can't handle it.
Yeah, that's right. Look, it's pretty spicy, but it's not the spiciest I've seen. I got to be honest.
Better than my face, or
yeah, way better. Please never do that again. So mechanomics. Okay. Venezuela is a crap hole. Sure. Why is that the American taxpayer's problem? This is a valid question. Right. I don't dismiss this question outright because I criticize American adventurism all the time. I've criticized their interventions in Iraq and Afghanistan and all sorts of other places in the past. So this is a valid question. And this is one of the things that I've wrestled with a little bit, because I'm thrilled at the news that Maduro is out of power, although, let's be honest, his government is still in power. Trump's talking a big game about how the US runs Venezuela now. Well, no, they don't. They don't have any boots on the ground, and in my opinion, nor should they. So what does that mean in practice, right? But Maduro is out, and I'm happy about that. But you're absolutely right. How is this the US taxpayers' problem? Let me put two things to you, and let me preface this by saying I'm still working my way through this. But let me put two things to you that I've worked my way through on this. Number one, America is, through circumstances that are not the current president, through circumstances that were not made by the current president, they've been made over the last 100 years, dependent on the oil trade for its own economic survival, and specifically dependent on the oil trade happening in US dollars. So the stakes for the American people, the American economy, with what happens with the global oil trade are incredibly high. And we would see a market correction. We would see an economic crisis in the US on a scale that would make everything else we've seen in recorded history look like nothing if the US dollar were to no longer be the global reserve currency. So why is it the taxpayer's problem? Well, that's a utilitarian argument. I don't like utilitarian arguments, but such as it is, there is the utilitarian argument to say, hey, this is relatively cheap. As far as I'm aware, they didn't lose any American servicemen. Okay, they did kill some of Maduro's security team, which is obviously regrettable. However, again, this is global geopolitics. People get killed again.
Sorry, I'm just going to interject there. When you say, "Oh, it's not good that his security people died," they're henchmen. These are people who have probably killed innocent people, right? Like, let's be really clear on who's getting the bullets here, right? Like, when we're talking about people at the top level of government in Venezuela getting killed, these are narco-terrorists. Let's not sugarcoat it. These aren't good people. This is not innocent people. Now, do we want innocent civilians to die? Of course not. But this is the real fucking world. People die, unfortunately. This idea that there can be some kind of like roundtable discussion where world leaders all come to the table and we all have this very civil discussion. Well, actually, I think you should do this. Well, no, maybe you should do that. That's not what the terrorists do. That's not what Iran's doing. No, that's not what Sudan's doing. That's not what Somalia is doing. That's not what Yemen's doing with it. Right?
But to a certain degree, that's what makes them and us. And so that doesn't, we can't allow that to be an excuse for us to then engage in that behavior ourselves.
Well,
right? So there is a line.
Of course, but there aren't any. Sorry, there's no clear runs in war. There's no like. I want to give you a caveat, right? Like, let's just make this a little bit more human. Do you know about a street or a place in Philadelphia called Kensington? Are you familiar with this?
No.
This is the epicenter of the fentanyl crisis in the US. You know, when you see everyone like bent over and, people like kind of laugh because they look like zombies, right? Like, and I'm just saying that
I've seen it in DC. I saw it on a small scale in DC with my own eyes. Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. Okay. So Kensington, Philadelphia is what they call ground zero. You see it a lot in Portland. You see it in parts of LA. And unfortunately, a lot of the South where, it's very poor, particularly when we're talking about Appalachia, they have been overrun by drugs, right? And this is not a simple argument, and I'm not trying to sum it up really quickly in 20 seconds. But when you look at somewhere like Appalachia, which was the coal mining district of the US, that's not a thing anymore. These people have nothing else. They have no jobs. They turn to drugs. When we look at how many people are dying from drugs in the US, it is an epidemic. It is literally, like, I don't want to say the word genocide because it's not a genocide, but it is a massacre of people, right? It is unconscionable how many people are dying from drugs being flooded into the US. Now, if you want to be a conspiracy theorist, you could say this is deliberate on the behalf of China, who produce fentanyl, on the behalf of the Colombian cartels and the Venezuelan cartels, because, hey, death to America. You could argue all that. But when we're talking about Venezuela, when we're talking about regime change, yes, it's about oil, it's about power, sure. But no one is considering how many people on both sides are dying because all of these people in the top brass are sitting there playing chess with each other. That's why I'm always trying to bring it back down.
So let me, I guess, add a few things that I think are relevant to that point, because it's a good point. The drug situation is genuinely serious. People end up on drugs because of other reasons, not because they like drugs. And as you've said, they've lost their businesses, they've lost their livelihoods. This is where they've lived for generations. It's the only thing they know. And now there's nothing there for them and they end up on the drugs. That addiction is a symptom, right? When people end up on, and I say this as someone who's been addicted to alcohol as a result of all the COVID stuff, and I've had to work my way out of that. I now have a very friendly, very healthy relationship with alcohol, right? And I've had to do that work myself. Did I become an addict because I'm an addict? No, I became an addict because that was my coping mechanism with something else. So I would suggest to you the better way to deal with the drug epidemic is to deal with the reason why people are turning to drugs in the first place. Because if you just take away the drugs, they go to alcohol. If you take away both of those, they go to something else. I mean, this stuff can be manufactured at home. He's probably watching right now, but there's someone who lives not far from me. We had a cigar the other night. He did time for drug manufacturing and for being in the drug business. He hasn't forgotten how to make them. He could make a lot of money if he wanted to, manufacturing drugs out of stuff that he buys from a chemist, manufacturing drugs and selling them on the street. Like, this is not a trade that we can stop by stopping the drugs. It's one of the reasons why I'm opposed to the war on drugs. And what's happened in Venezuela doesn't change my position on the war on drugs. But also we have to. There comes a point where we're looking at the addict as a victim to the degree that we've removed their agency. And yes, I understand once the biological addiction kicks in, there is a certain loss of agency. This is why when you take someone cold turkey, you got to lock them up, you got to protect them, because the physical cravings and the psychological cravings are just extreme and can be very harmful. I acknowledge that, but we don't actually fix the drug epidemic by taking away the drugs. We fix the drug epidemic by taking away people's whatever it was that was missing that caused them to go looking for that, go turning to that in the first place. So I'm not sure that I'm convinced by your argument, particularly in that regard. But I want to come back to the American taxpayer for a second and make the second point that I was going to make there, which is the argument. So let's go to an analogy of a street. You live at one end of a street. At the other end of your street, there is a house that is overrun by, I don't know, a violent dad. Okay? And you can hear the screaming, you can hear the beatings, you can hear all of that going on, and you sit there and go, you know what? It's none of my business. I'm gonna stay in my lane, blah, 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 right? If the wife comes running out to you and says, I need your help, at some point a threshold gets crossed where I would suggest not only can you get involved, but you actually have a moral obligation to get involved, at the very least to protect the family and get them out of there, if not to actually actively deal with the source of the problem. When you have a country that is run by someone that the opposition and millions of people in their own country are screaming bloody murder, we need this guy out. We've voted him out. We've done all the right things. He is beating us to death. We're starving to death. We're dying from a lack of medical care. We're dying from all kinds of preventable causes. And they are the house at the other end of the street screaming out, somebody come and help us. Right. Let's not forget that Trump has personally met with the Venezuelan woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize, who's been very active in the opposition. Trump has met with personally a lot of the people that are in Venezuela that are essentially the wife going, hey, help us. We need help here. And I don't know whether that threshold has been crossed in this specific case, but we need to accept that there is a threshold where that gets crossed, where you go, okay, you actually no longer only have the option to get involved, but you actually now have a moral responsibility. You find someone that's been hit by a car in a hit and run and they're bleeding on the footpath. I think we have a moral responsibility to go, hey, I'm going to help you. And especially if that person's calling out for help, if someone's saying, hey, I'm appealing to you, I need your help. I don't think we can just brush that off. And so Trump's characterization of Maduro as an illegitimate leader, and he is categorizing him as that for a very good reason. I don't want to go into another history lesson, but if you look at Panama, they did the exact same thing with Noriega. So the US funded the building of the Panama Canal, and Noriega, who was a CIA asset, he was a part of the American team in the Iran-Contra situation, yet another CIA asset turned into an enemy. That's a long story. He turned into a dictator and he was killing his opponents. He was impoverishing his country. He was running a narco-terrorist state. He was doing all the same things. And they actually invaded Panama. It was a boots on the ground invasion. Took them a couple of days to take over the country and then about a month to sort of clean up and take Noriega prisoner. They took him back to the US and they prosecuted him as a narco-terrorist. His defense was, we're a sovereign state. I'm the head of a sovereign state. So you can't prosecute me. I have diplomatic immunity. And the US court disregarded that defense on this ground. And this is important for the Maduro case. They said, but you're only in that position by the use of force. You are not the legitimate president of Panama. You've been voted out multiple times. You've just refused to leave and you've used force to stay there. So we don't regard you as a legitimate head of state. Therefore, we don't respect any claims to sovereign immunity. And therefore, we're going to prosecute you as a common criminal. And so that's the situation in Venezuela, where we're saying, well, clearly he was voted out. He's kind of stopped even pretending that he wasn't. It's just like, well, I've got the power. So what are you going to do? And the people of Venezuela are crying out for help against an illegitimate government that they have tried every peaceful means to remove. And I think there is an argument to say, well, at some point, yes, the US taxpayer can get upset about the money being spent, in the same way that I might get upset that, I have to interrupt my cushy evening of watching TV to go and help that family down the road who's screaming out for help. Well, that seems like a pretty small inconvenience under the circumstances. So that's my second position on that.
I'm going to add a caveat to that, though, because if the left have their way, they'll argue that Venezuelans illegally crossing over into the US are a taxpayer problem because they put them up in migrant hotels and give them all the things and all the social security to get them set up in the US. And the left love to tell us that no one's illegal and that the Venezuelans, once they're in the US, are a taxpayer responsibility. It's just weird how the hypocrisy works like that, right? What, and the thing is, right, like I'm no geopolitical expert. I'm not even an expert on any of this stuff. Like I've got no idea. I'm the same as most people. I just see this honestly with a realist attitude. And I look at it and go, well, what's the solution then? I see a lot of people flapping their gums saying, oh, this isn't right. This should be this. Okay, give me your solution, right? Like everyone in the comments is sitting there going, oh, you guys aren't going deep enough. You don't know the real story. What is your solution? Yeah. Give me an answer. What's the solution? I'll wait.
Well, you'll be waiting a while because I'm not one of those people. So I don't know who's going to answer.
You see my point, though. This comes back to what I was saying. It's so easy for us to sit here and have this conversation. It's so easy to argue with each other. We're not the ones that are worried about dying tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? Like when you think about it, when you boil it all down, left, right, politics, whatever, none of it matters. At the end of the day, we're all safe. We're all fine.
Although I take exception to your characterization. I didn't want to interrupt you because you were being spicy at the time. But when you said that we're all watching our big TVs, mine's only 77 inches and my neighbor's got an 85 inch. And I feel like I'm a bit underprivileged at the moment. So, I just want you to check your privilege, I guess.
I won't say it. I won't say it.
It's not the size that matters. It's what you do with it. So this is an interesting point by CJ Westman. Foreign oil companies spent billions in infrastructure in Venezuela and also provided the experience developed from 2 to 3 generations of trial and error. And Chavez, who's the one who socialized the country, stole that investment. That is accurate. That is an accurate characterization of what happened. It is analogous to when Panama just simply took the Panama Canal, despite the fact that it had been built with American money and they had a legal ownership over that 10-mile strip to be able to operate and own the Panama Canal. So yes, I mean, it gets complicated. It's the same with any of these conflicts. Wherever there's history, then you're going to get the tit for tat of, oh, but this, oh, but that, oh, but this. Ukraine and Russia, oh, but all the provocations from NATO, that's true. But also Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons on the promises of security assurances by NATO. But then you can go before that. And in the case of Russia, Ukraine, you can go back, 1800 years if you want to. And at some point, you actually just have to stop mining back into history and start looking at what's right, as best as any human can be the judge of that. But also there has to be, and I hate utilitarian arguments because they're dangerous and they can be abused, but we have to keep one eye on the reality of how people are living in the real world. Exactly what you said before. When there are people dying of preventable causes that are being forced into a position where they're going to die by their own government, and they're screaming out for help, and in the case of Venezuela, that government is not even legitimate in the first place, at some point we have to go, okay, let's just stop the death. Let's just stop the suffering and figure out a way forward from here.
Look, I often wonder, when we get into these comments or these discussions, not just you and I, but like political leaders and whatnot.
Socially, yeah.
How few people have these arguments in an abstract matter as opposed to having the forefront of their mind the true cost of human suffering, right? Like whenever I hear people do the whataboutism, oh, well, someone just wrote on my reel before, oh, so you want the US to invade Saudi then, and things like that. Obviously saying that Saudi has breached human rights and things as well. And I'm like, okay, so then we have that totem pole thing again, right? Like, so we can't care about anything until we figure out who's at the very top. And until that one particular problem is solved, nothing else gets
not allowed to care about anything else. Yep.
It's such a silly argument. Like, the world is complex. All of these things are complex. None of us are saying this is a simple solution. But my frustration around all of this is I can tell when people speak about it. At the forefront of their mind, they're thinking about winning this as an ideological view. And they are not considering the people who are living with the consequences of this. And look, I don't have the answers. I see things as I see them. I call it as I see it. And until someone presents me a clear solution, Yeah.
Well, thank you, Black Raven. We love doing what we do, and we're very glad to have yourself and so many others listening. And thank you to everyone for the comments.
And this is time for telling you guys to share the show. We want to grow the podcast to 10,000 this year. That's ambitious.
Yes, we do. That's our aim. What are we, 4,100, 4,200 at the moment?
Somewhere there. Ideally, I want a silver plaque, so 100,000. But I mean, it depends how much you guys love us.
So one of these, Carly. You want one of these with the Oddcast written on it?
I would laugh if I get a gold one before you do. Like, should we make that a pact? Like,
that will never happen because I will sabotage the shit out of you to make sure it doesn't.
Imagine how smug I'd be. Oh,
it's insufferable just thinking about it. So Baz makes the comment, they're all corrupt. Yes. Okay. Venezuela's going to be a shit show. Probably. The funny thing is the reason why I'm really interested in this parallel between Venezuela and Panama is because Panama is possibly the only example in history of American intervention leading to a stable democracy. It's the one exception. They intervened in Iran, shit show, Iraq, shit show, Afghanistan, shit show, Syria, blah, blah, blah. You can list them off. And, most of their interventions I'd say all of their other interventions in Central and South America, shit show. Nothing has worked out well, with the exception of Panama. What made the difference there, right? That's the question that's kind of bugging me and bothering me. And that appears to be the playbook that Trump is using. Does that mean that he believes he knows why that one worked and he's going to try and do this one the same way? I don't know. Is it likely to be a shit show? Yes, it is. Is it guaranteed to be a shit show? I'm not willing to say that yet. Now, this last sentence here is worth exploring. They will not surrender their incomes without force. Venezuela is a very divided country, and the divide is very clear. You can actually, as you're driving around Caracas, you know which area you're in, the government area or the opposition area. The government area is filled with people who are on the public teat, the government employees, the welfare recipients, the desperate. It is run down. It is a slum, essentially, right? You know, you can see that they used to have the same amount of money. They used to be the same. The buildings are the same, but what they've done to the buildings and the condition of the buildings is a slum now. Then you drive and you suddenly go, oh, I feel like the sun came out, but it didn't. It's just you're in a cleaner area. You know, a lot of what Carly talks about with, you know, weeds pulled out of the sidewalks and graffiti not being as prevalent and these sorts of indicators. And I got talking to Ricardo was our guide for the week in Venezuela, and I got talking to him about it, and he said, yeah, this is where all the entrepreneurs live. And he used that word. This is where the entrepreneurs live. This is the half of Venezuela that was prosperous before socialism came in, the ones that got ruined by socialism because private enterprise and small business, etc., all went out the window. And they still have enough pride in themselves that they're still doing the work. They're still maintaining things. They're still, and these are the ones that are yearning for a day when Venezuela can be set free and they can just run a business and feed a family and live what we would consider normal but very humble lives. That's all they're really yearning for. So no, there is a huge proportion of Venezuela. And if the 70% landslide loss against Maduro is any evidence of the last election, there is now a majority of Venezuelans who would rather risk losing what they have in order to get what they haven't had for 3.5 decades. There's now a majority of those people than there are the bitter clingers who want that free T-shirt from the rally in the city.
We watched a Bald and Bankrupt video yesterday. It was actually from a year ago. So I bring him up often on this channel because he's an incredible human in the sense that he goes to these places that you and I would just never want to go. He actually did the Darien Gap migration route, and it was bone chilling. It was. I think
I saw part of that video.
Yeah, it was actually really hard to watch. You know, they come across dead bodies and, you know, you think you're on the equator. You can imagine the smell, you know, the cartels in the jungles, all sorts of things, right? So he's done that trip. And I highly encourage you guys, if you're interested, Bald and Bankrupt is the YouTube channel. But we were watching the Venezuela one yesterday, and he was there over a year or so ago. And he stumbled upon this man living under an overpass, right? And this person was basically selling junk for cents on the dollar. And he was showing, like, I think he had like an Etch-a-Sketch, and he had a recorder, and he was trying to sell it to Bold, like, you know, because he's like, obviously he's trying to get some money. And then on the makeshift wall that he's built, so he's built like a little shanty against the overpass wall. And there's like, I don't know, plywood or something up. And there's some frames there, and they're university degrees, right? And they're obviously written in Spanish, but it says, you know, University of Venezuela or something like that. And then Bald was able to decipher that it said architecture. And he's like, oh, you're an architect? He's like, yes. He's like, very well-known architect, right? Like, here's his 3 degrees. And this is someone who's highly educated, who has a profession, who's living in a shanty he's built under an overpass, selling an Etch-a-Sketch or a recorder, right? And like that got me yesterday. I watched that, like, that choked me up because I saw that in Cuba, and Cuba's not quite the same because Cuba's been like that for half a century or more. But Venezuela, the problem with it and why it's so hard for them is they knew prosperity. They knew good times, right? They're now living with the realities of socialism in their country, and they're the voices that I don't see in the discussion. Like, even now I can see, like, I'm getting all these notifications on my Instagram, and I saw one pop up going, thank you for being on Venezuela's side. And, you know, they're the people who no one wants to listen to because realistically, they're not going to sit down and create a cute YouTube video and highly edited it and put it out there to try and educate Westerners, are they? They're too busy going, how do I feed my kids tonight? And that's the reality of the situation. There are so many people who should be at the table having a discussion who aren't invited. And so, like, if anything, that's what I try and keep in the forefront of people's mind is, like, you know, again, I've said this 3 times now. when we're discussing it, we're not looking at the actual reality. We're talking about it in law. We're talking about it in policy. We're talking about it in ideology. But at the risk of making this a real downer episode, may I uplift it and segue us onto a new topic?
Okay, just before you do, I want to grab one more comment. This is a rare example of someone who I just go, you know what, I can't engage with you because the level of closed-mindedness in this comment from Yamez, Yamez has made up his mind and there's no amount of evidence that's ever going to change it. Topher, you sound like the Q80 babies in the incubator story, or Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. Stop trying to say it's people from the left, mate. I'm so far right, you've got no idea, and you're lying right now. Well, at least you got the guts to call me a liar to my face, although, and I assume that is your face on your profile, so I will say respect to you for using your name, or at least some derivative of your name and your face. I'm not lying. You're living in a fantasy world. If you want to sit here and say to people that have been there and seen it with their own eyes that I'm the liar, be my guest, mate, but you're too far gone. You are one of the rare people that I put in the category of, you know what, I don't give a shit. You do you, mate. I'm not even going to try and change your mind.
I saw a comment before. I actually think it was that guy, or maybe it was someone else, and they were talking about you guys. Your history is only 10 years deep. You know, you haven't gone all the way back to the CIA and all that sort of stuff. This is the issue. Whilst history is important, what happened 60 years ago, Cuban Missile Crisis, the toppling of regimes, installing dictators, and blah, 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 blah. There's obviously truth in that. No one's denying that. But again, what is your solution? We can't undo what they did in the 60s. We can't go back and undo any of that. George W. Bush was an idiot. The neocons were corrupt. We know this. No one's defending them. No one believes that Iraq was a good war. Oh, well, sorry. Most people who aren't neocons agree that Iraq was a terrible decision. Everyone looked at what happened with the withdrawal from Afghanistan and was disgusted with America. What is missing in that discussion is it's not Americans and America as a whole. It is the people in power. And there are bad people on both sides of the aisle, which is why I find talking about left and right, Democrat, Republican, liberal, Labor, so reductive. It is not useful. This is not about left or right. You don't need to be right-wing to point out leftist stupidity, and you don't need to be a leftist to point out right-wing stupidity. What this is, I said this in my reel, and I will die on this hill. This is pro-human versus anti-human. We saw this in COVID. Both sides of the political aisle mandated that vaccine. Both sides of the political aisle locked us in our home. Both sides of the political aisle weaponized the police against people who were dissenting. If you think this is a left or right thing, you are kidding yourself. I want to go back. It's a quick segue. Have you seen, it hasn't even come out in Australia yet, but G and I watched it with a VPN, Nuremberg, the new movie with Russell Crowe.
No, but I'm looking forward to it.
Brilliant. If you've got a VPN, it's on Amazon in the US, 10 out of 10. Russell Crowe deserves the Oscar for that. It was brilliant. He played Hermann Goering. Anyway, so for those who aren't familiar, quick recap, Nuremberg are the trials post-World War II of the Nazis. It wasn't necessarily historically accurate. It was to a degree, but there's, that element of Hollywood.
Editorializing.
The thing that really struck me was there was two psychologists that were used by the US military to come in and assess these Nazis, right? To try and understand them, to see how they think, right? And they're talking about the liberation of Dachau and the liberation of Auschwitz. And Goering just says that he didn't know that was happening. That was, sorry, am I getting, no. God, it's Goering is the third, and who was the second? I forget.
Well, there's Goebbels, Goering, Himmler.
Sorry,
I don't know which character he played.
No, I was right. Himmler was in charge of the final solution. Goering was second in charge under Hitler. Sorry, I got that confused. So he was saying, even though he was second in charge under Hitler, he did not know about the death camps, right? He was pleading ignorance. And then this first psychologist comes in, chats to him, diagnoses him as a narcissist and all that sort of stuff. And then anyway, the Nuremberg trials happen. Go watch the movie. I won't ruin it for you guys, even though historically we know what happens. But at the end of the movie, there's a scene, and one of the psychologists wrote a book. And he goes on the radio back in the 40s to talk about how we are kidding ourselves if we think we're not capable of what the Nazis did. Now, Americans post-World War II didn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Lefties don't want to hear that people on their side can be malevolent dictators like Hitler, right? Lefties will deny the horrific crimes of Mao, of Stalin, of Kim Jong-un, because it doesn't suit their socialist utopia. But the one thing that is fundamental at all of this is all humans are capable of this. Whether it is nature, whether it is environmental, we all have it in us. And you see that with politicians on a very small scale. I'm not calling all of our politicians like Machiavellian dictators, but when you have that proximity to power, and again, Tolkien, it's perfect here, it corrupts you. You get a taste of that sophistication, that power, that elitism. And the wrong personality is easily drunk on that. And then you end up with this. So that argument about left, right, CIA, Rothschild, oil, guys, it's not a left-wing, right-wing thing. It's so much bigger than that. It is honestly, in my opinion, pro-human versus anti-human. It is good versus evil.
100%. 100%.
That is that's my deal.
If you're more of a reader than a movie watcher, there was a wonderful book called They Thought They Were Free. It was written by, I'll get his name in a minute, but it's quite a well-known book. It's been republished now because there's been renewed interest in it. I have a copy. I was just looking around for it. It's not in my studio. I must have put it inside. A researcher who was a German Jewish American was sent from the university, I think the University of Chicago sent him to a university town in Germany pretty much within a year or so after the end of the Second World War. And he was officially on a research exchange. He had a job to do in this university town, but that was just a cover. His actual research, as given to him by the university, was to befriend people who had been members of the Nazi Party, not your Gorings, your Goebbels, and your Himmlers, but the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, the common man on the street. Find the ones that were out and proud Nazis and members of the party at the time during the war, befriend them, and just get to know them and try and understand, how do these people tick? Like, why did they join the party? What did they know? Is this what they wanted? Were they, etc. So he goes through the accounts of 10 different friendships that he's able to make in that year and the conversations that he has. And he would have a conversation, he would go home and he would write that conversation down. And they were his notes that he then wrote the book based on. And what was shocking to me as I read, I mean, it shouldn't have been shocking because it's obvious, but it was still shocking to read it and realize if you change the names and the places, you were talking about Melbourne during COVID. Now, before you come at me, these weren't the people in the death camps. These weren't the people running the executions. These were the people back away from the front lines, away from the camps, living normal lives, but participating in the segregation, participating in the fear campaign and the exclusion and the dobbing in and the sicking the Stasi on, not the Stasi, the brown shirts, the Hitler Youth onto the wrong people who were doing the wrong thing. Some of them participated in the burning of a synagogue, but that was about as bad as they individually got. But when you saw the attitudes that they expressed and the way that the propaganda worked on them and what they came to believe about people who used to be their neighbors. This was a town that had a significant Jewish population. This is why they picked it. It was a university town that had a significant Jewish population before the war. And those Jews had either been displaced early in the war or had ultimately gone off to death camps. And so these people had neighbors who were dead. And some of them had dobbed them in. Some of them were the reason why these people had gone off to the camps, but they weren't the ones, they weren't turning the spigot on the gas chambers, right? And it's shocking to see how mundane it actually is in practice. Arendt, not Hannah Arendt. Yes, Hannah Arendt wrote the book. I think it was her that wrote the book, The Banality of Evil. Evil is so often mundane. It's suits and spreadsheets and rules and regulations and crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's and doing what the book said they should do. That's what evil so often is. And it really comes through in this book. And you read that book, you can be in no doubt that each and every one of us, if we allow ourselves to fall prey to that kind of indoctrination, is capable of exactly that behavior. And we should be very wary of anyone who is so sure of their own righteousness that they actually insist that it couldn't possibly be them. There's no imaginable circumstance under which that could ever be me. I'm too good. Those are the people you need to watch out for the most.
So this comment here, what the fuck has this got to do with Australia? Well, if you just listen, we're explaining it to you, right? This is happening here in Australia right now, and people do not see it. Evil is currently running Australia. These are people who I believe got into politics with an altruistic mindset, who thought they could do the right thing, and now are drunk on power. We've just talked about Karen. You don't think that the suppression of people's voices, particularly political opposition, is evil? You don't think that rounding people up in COVID, shooting rubber bullets at them for merely protesting because they weren't allowed to work is evil? Evil is here. And this is my point. We always talk about dictators, or we talk about, horrific human rights abuses in these far off lands. Oh, it happens in the Congo. It happens in Yemen. It could never happen in Australia. I'll give you an example. We've said it 1,000 times, but to really drive it home, COVID, dob on your neighbor. If you see someone 5 kilometers from home, let us know. Do it for the greater good.
So I just rewatched Battleground Melbourne because I was in Japan for a showing, and I hadn't watched it for ages because I find it really hard to watch my own documentary. But I had to sit through it, and the press conferences. There's Daniel Andrews. If your neighbor's house has a bunch of cars out the front, well, you know they're not doing the right thing, right? This is exactly what we were instructed to do. If you see a Jew walking around and they don't have the star on their shoulder, they're not doing the right thing, right? There isn't a difference. There's a difference in the final solution. Sorry to use their language, but that was actually only late in the war. People forget this. That was actually only in the second half of the war, and it wasn't on Hitler's original list of things to do. He wanted the Jews out, and America said, "No, you can't send them here. Thank you very much." They then worked on a plan. This is going to sound unbelievable. You can look it up. This is historically true. They worked on a plan to ship the Jews to Madagascar. The Germans were going to basically take them to Madagascar, push them off the boat and say, if you live, have fun. That was their plan. But then there was a war on, and the logistics of that, the cost of that, the material, the resources required to do that. Eventually, I don't know who it was, but someone said, hey, how about this, the final solution? And that's how that evolved. So you can't look at where the Nazis ended up and say, oh, you can't compare Australia to that. Well, hang on, I'm not comparing it to where they ended up. I'm comparing Australians and what I've seen in Australians to where they started. And
it's
that should concern us.
Evil that you're pointing out. It's the seed of evil. And allowed to foster, it will grow. I'll give you another example because this happened to me during COVID. Now, as you guys know, I only have one lung, and that was my get out of jail free card. I refused to wear a mask, not because of my lung thing, just because I was like, fuck you, I'm not doing that stupid shit. I grew up in Japan. I grew up in a country where we wore masks as a courtesy when you were sick, not as some kind of like virtue signaling, I'm holier than thou bullshit. Anyway, I was going for a walk during, God knows what lockdown it was, and I wasn't wearing my mask. And I kid you not, this verbatim, this happened to me. I was in Armstrong Creek, and this lady was, coming past me. The look of disgust on her face, you would think I curb stomped her newborn child, right? That's how she was looking at me.
Yeah.
And as she got closer to me, maybe like 2-3 meters away, I kid you not, she went and spat at me. No word of a lie, right? And I like, at this point, I'm just like, what the fuck? What the fuck? And I'm thinking she's just crazy, she's mental, whatever. Anyway, then she starts screaming at me. How dare you? Why aren't you wearing a mask? You're, just going off her head. And I like, as much as I get spicy on here, I'm not really great with conflict like that because I kind of go, ugh, I freeze. I'm like, what? Anyway, she's yelling at me and screaming. And then I looked at her and I said, are you done? I said, you just spat at me. You literally spat at me. And she's like,
bodily fluid.
Right? And I'm like, if anyone's spreading germs, honey, it's you. And then anyway, and then she kind of realized, right? She kind of doubled back. And then all of a sudden it's like hit her, like, oh my God. And she goes, I shouldn't have done that. You're right. I shouldn't have done that. I said, but you did. But you did do it. And she's like, oh, well, you should be wearing a mask, right? And then she tried to do the whole, moral speech. And she goes, why aren't you wearing a mask? And I said, because I'm medically exempt, which, yes, bullshit, whatever. And she goes, well, I don't know that, do I? And I'm like, so you spit at me? Like, I kid you not, this really happened. This is like lockdown 1 or 2, somewhere there. Anyway, when everyone was like fighting with toilet paper. And then she goes, well, you should be wearing some identification that tells me you're medically exempt. So I don't have to worry about you. And I'm like, and I looked her dead in the eye and I said, like a yellow star on my chest. And at that point, like she didn't admit it, but I could tell at that point she went, huh. Do you know what I mean? And then she just walked off in a huff. The reason I tell that story, like random Joe Schmo walked around my neighborhood and that was her reaction. Now, I don't condemn her. I don't think she's evil. I think she's a victim of all the propaganda that she was watching 24 hours a day across social media, across mainstream media, in the newspapers. Like, let's just cast your mind back to 2020 and remember how over the top it was, right? What that does to someone with weak constitution, with little value, right? They get brainwashed. They do. And I'm not like everyone's capable of being brainwashed. Anyone that's had a coercive partner knows how easy it is to like fall under the spell of someone. When there's not like a weakness there. It's proximity, and it's done in a way it's either gaslighting, love bombing, you know, it's emotional blackmail, emotional manipulation. All humans are capable of this. That's the sinister part of it. It's not you're born evil. Sure, there's people who are psychopaths, Machiavellian, or what's the other one? What's the third dark triad? It's off the top of my head. Narcissist, right? Yes, those people exist, sure. But every single one of us has those attributes, and you only need a catalyst. And that's the point. That's why, like, I hate using the German example because it's such a horrible example. But the same thing happened in, I was going to say Colombia, not Colombia, Cambodia.
Okay. Yep.
Right. So, do you know how few Australians are aware of Pol Pot and what happened with the Khmer Rouge?
Yeah, the killing fields.
To me.
Yeah.
People don't understand that when you're afraid and you're afraid that you'll be killed, you'll do anything to not be killed. And if that means sacrificing your neighbor, most people do it. That's the evil part of it. Right. And so as I said before, it's really easy to sit here and say, oh, well, I wouldn't do that when I'm in that situation. I'd do this.
Yeah.
Because COVID showed us how few people would actually stand up.
There's another layer to it, and I've gone through it before, but it's been a little while, so I'm mindful there's probably a lot of people that haven't sort of heard this construct before. But there are the people that do it out of fear. That's true. But there's also the people that do it because that kind of a moment gives them a sense of belonging and purpose that they've never had before. So I've talked before about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is kind of the triangle. Down the bottom are your essential needs for survival: oxygen, food, water, blah, blah. Up the top is at the pinnacle of the triangle is like your best life. It's referred to as self-actualization, where you have purpose and fulfillment and belonging and confidence, and all of your needs are taken care of. And that's sort of the pinnacle of human experience. And most of us are, if I do that, this is going to get screenshot, isn't it? I'm going to get turned into an Illuminati. Most of us are living in the middle of that triangle somewhere. You know, we're not desperate for survival most of the time, but also we're not living our best life either. Now, when lockdowns happen, it splits that blob of people in the middle. It splits them in two. The people that are affected financially get pushed towards the bottom, some of them into the worst survival type situation they've ever been in their life. But for the people that are the laptop workers, the welfare recipients, essential workers, these sorts of people, not only do they not get pushed towards the bottom, they are invited by, in our case in Victoria, Daniel Andrews, but whether it's Pol Pot or whoever it may be, they are invited to move up. Because think about the language. I'm going to use Daniel Andrews because that's the most pertinent example locally. His language was, you know, be a part of the team. Staying apart keeps us together. Staying home saves lives. You can save lives just by sitting on your couch. Have you ever saved a life before? Well, now you can, and you don't even have to take any risks. You just got to stay right where you are and keep listening to me at 11 a.m. every single day. This is a level of purpose and belonging that most people have never had before. So the reality of that woman who spat at you and so many other people, I had similar experiences. I would take my kids to the parks when they were closed, and my kids never played at the parks as much as they did once they were closed. The minute they said the parks are closed, we were at 2 or 3 different parks every single day. And I would have people come and try and abuse me in front of my kids, trying to, yell at me from their cars or come out and remonstrate with me. They wouldn't come close. They'd be over on the edge of the playground trying to yell at me from over there. And for these people, they are pursuing a higher call. They are actually doing good. I'm so boring, even my TV's falling asleep. They are doing good by coming and abusing a random stranger in front of his kids, or by spitting on a random person in the street. This is actually a part of their highest calling and the greatest sense of belonging and purpose and meaning that they've ever had in their lives. And this is why, now that all of that's undone and all the restrictions are gone, so many people, you still can't talk to them about it. You still can't say, hey, now that the heat of the moment is gone, can we talk about this? You can't use logic or reason with these people, because it was never logic or reason for them. It was purpose and meaning and belonging. For some people, for the wrong kinds of psyches, these weren't just the best years of their life up to that point in time. Those will forever be the best years of their life. Those will be the years where they were the closest to the pinnacle of self-actualization that they will ever be. And those are the people that are incredibly dangerous in the hands of someone who is, more extreme than a Daniel Andrews, your Pol Pots, your Hitlers, all that. When those people get a hold of a population that has a significant percentage of that type of psychology in it, that's when actual genocides can take place.
And what's scary about that is it's actually not that hard to cultivate. I'll share this on Wednesday because I don't have it with me, but I'm reading a book at the moment called Dark Psychology, and it's talking about those attributes, Machiavellian, narcissist, and psychopathy, from a point of how we all possess them, and people who are aware of them and able to use them in a way that can manipulate people for business, for work, for relationships, not necessarily in a nefarious way. Obviously, you can do that, but more so as a negotiating tool, as a way to sort of come out on top. And, either be manipulated or be the manipulator. It's kind of one of those things, chicken or egg.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because I know parts of this, but reading this, you can identify, it might be subtle, but once you're aware of it, and very few people would pay attention to this stuff. Once you're aware of it, you can see that your boss is manipulating you, your partner's manipulating you, not all of them, but there's definitely ways of doing it. And it can be so clandestine. It can be so covert that you never hear people say the actual words. It's done in a way that's really, really tugging on people's emotions. When you're able to sort of elicit emotions out of people, you're then able to control them, because most people are quite reactive. We talk about IQ, you've got EQ, right? And if you're not focused on cultivating EQ, you can have your emotions weaponized by someone who knows exactly how to trigger you. And that's happening right now with the left. I mean, what I find funny is, days ago we're protesting for Palestine, and then immediately it's a costume change, and now we're Venezuela. Before that, it was Ukraine. Before that was Black Lives Matter. Before that was trans, whatever, right? It's so easy to fire them up. And I mean, Lenin, thank you, whoever keeps correcting me, I've remembered now. Lenin says the term useful idiots. That's what they are, because these people are victims of their emotion. They're so easy to program. And this is why when I started today's podcast, I was talking about how this is the resurgence of the individual. This is a reclamation of agency, because when you are really grounded in your values, when you have conviction, when you have a really strong personal constitution, you can't have your emotions weaponized, because you're not going to react like that. You can hear it. Like, if that happened to me today, if that woman came up to me and spat in my face and whatever, I'm telling you now, with no word of a lie, I'd punch her in the face. I'd be like, sorry, fuck around, find out. And people go, oh, violence isn't the solution. Yeah, it is. You just spat in my face. Guess what? I'm going to escalate it, and you won't do that again, right? I'm not going to spit back in your face, because that's the same thing. Punching you in the face, oh, shit. I didn't like that. I won't do it again. Like, metaphorically speaking, there's ways to counteract this stuff. And with the useful idiots of the left, so triggered by their emotions, this is where the opportunity lies. Look at the way they react to things, understand it, and it becomes a lot easier to have conversations and also twist them around.
Yeah. And the reason why this is relevant in Australia, we're talking about, Hitler in Germany, we're talking about Venezuela, we're talking about a lot of different things. Human nature is much more the same than we want to admit. When we look at other cultures and other countries, we see the cultural differences, the difference in language and food and attitudes and religions and so forth. And yes, there are some very big differences. But actually, those differences make up only a relatively small percentage of what makes a person a person. Our psychology, our nature is fundamentally unchanged for the last however many thousands of years. and is not as different as we would like to believe it is between the different cultures. I'm not saying all cultures are the same, not by any stretch, but the differences are not as great as we like to believe. We look at something that happened in another culture, like the Khmer Rouge, and we go, oh, but that was them. That's not going to be us. Here's a sobering thought. The worst atrocities, the worst holocausts, the worst genocides of human history haven't happened yet. Right? And there is nothing special about Western culture. There is a lot special about Western culture, but there is nothing inherent about Western culture that stops us from walking down that same path if we make the same mistakes. I said when I came back from Venezuela, to bring it back full circle, when I came back from Venezuela in 2015, yes, everybody have another sip, I said, Australia is not special. If we make the same mistakes, we will get the same results. And you know what my advice was at the time? I gave a speech at the Friedman conference shortly after my return. And they asked me, I was asked a question, what do we do? What do we do in Australia to make sure that we don't go down that same path? And my answer at the time is still largely my answer now. And it sort of informs all of my work. Fight even the small stuff. Don't let the small stuff slide. Yes, it's only a small increase in taxes. Oh, it's only a small regulation, change. It's only a small slice. It's only death by 1,000 cuts, right? If you don't fight the small stuff, it accumulates. And then when you find that you have to fight one of the big things, you're in no position to fight it. And the way the psychology gets used here is if you allow a whole bunch of incremental changes, then when the change finally gets to the threshold where you're like, nah, stuff this, I'm going to fight back. The powers that be can say, well, hang on, you didn't have a problem with this one, or with this one, or with this one, or with this one. Why do you have a problem with this one? It's just another small step, which is why I think we actually have to get in the habit of fighting every single thing. Fight them tooth and nail. Do not give them an inch. I don't care how small it is. If they don't have the authority to do it, fight them over it. Stop them. Do whatever you can to put a spoke in the machinery of state, to bastardize the quote from Bonhoeffer. To put a spoke in the wheels of the machinery of state. Do what you can, because if we don't fight the small stuff, you end up in a situation where you're in no position to fight the big stuff later on. And that's exactly where the Venezuelan people found themselves. We have to be pushing back. And I'm grateful that Australians, by and large, seem to be waking up. We seem to be in a moment where that groundswell is building. And I think 2026 is actually going to be a really exciting year for that reason. But this is the way. This is what we have to do. Don't let anything slide. If they don't have the right to do it, don't let them get away with it without a fight.
This brings me to my segue, which I was going to do half an hour ago. But to just lift the mood just a little bit.
Just a little.
Just, let some of that smoke out of the room. Everyone, big breath.
I like the smoke in the room. I like the smoke in the room.
3, inhale. Feels good, doesn't it? Feels good. All right.
What do you got?
I am going to tell you guys some exciting news because
okay.
As you know, you just were talking about fight the small stuff. So this is my focus for 2026. I came up with the idea last year, chicken in the noodle aisle. And not to drum it home to you guys, but it was all about misplaced groceries in the supermarket and people having just general nonchalantness to how their laziness creates a chain reaction, right? I won't keep going on about that, but I am dedicating the first half of this year to writing that as a book. And what it is, and what I've set out here, I talk about the reclaiming agency and the rise of the individual. And it comes down to these small things. Now, we've weaponized the word Karen, right? Like to show any stewardship of your land, to show any consideration for your assets, to care about the way you are, you're seen as a Karen. Oh God, don't you know there's people dying? First world problems, right? We've got all these pejoratives now that we just sledge at people. Like, oh, you think you're that? Oh, right? When I talk about chicken in the noodle aisle, I have got a whole bunch of chapters. I've already planned it all out. I've already started. And each chapter is just highlighting insignificant things that you and I, would absentmindedly walk past, but really they are the beginning of a really sinister thing. So I'm going to show you a picture. I sent this to Topher.
Okay.
And we're going to laugh. We're going to look at this and go, hee, hee, hee. But I'm going to paint a very sinister picture for you. So let me just grab this photo. All right. This is an intersection near me. What do you see? What does one see?
A giveaway sign, the back end of a small white car.
Yes.
That's clearly not Melbourne because I can see blue in the sky.
It is Melbourne. What we see here, friends, is a Christmas tree coming up through the gutter. Now, not just any Christmas tree. Someone has gone to the trouble of actually putting baubles on it, which I appreciate. I appreciate that humor. But that's actually a footpath. Now, if you had a wheelchair, do you think you would get past that Christmas tree? I'd say you probably wouldn't. I'd say that might get stuck in your wheels and you cause all sorts of catastrophes. But this tree did not grow yesterday. That tree did not grow last week. That tree has been growing for probably what? Almost 12 months?
I'd say probably, yeah, that and then some. Could be up to 2 years, but it's certainly been a while, yeah.
The trunk's about that big, right? Like it's big. So that has been growing and everyone has been walking past and no one's thought of it. Now all of a sudden it's a tree. Now what happens if that continues to go unnoticed? It's going to get really big, isn't it? And the roots are going to come up and then the concrete's going to start cracking and then the footpath becomes completely unusable. And then all of a sudden it's a huge problem. We need to resurface the road. We've got to re-pour the concrete. That's going to cost thousands of dollars. That's going to cause traffic chaos. When really, if you just had to pull that little weed out at the beginning, it wouldn't have caused that. Now, obviously, this is an analogy. I'm not just going on about weeds, but I've talked about this before, the Nepean Highway. For anyone that uses the Nepean Highway in Melbourne, have a look at the gutters. The gutters all the way from Mordialloc as far as Brighton until you get, sort of St Kilda, Elwood. Those gutters are full of soil, and in that soil is now grass and plants. That didn't happen yesterday. That has been happening for years. Now, the council has one job, and that's to maintain that, and they don't. Why? Because they see it as insignificant. What's important? That's silly stuff. Carly, didn't you know we've got to fight trans rights? We've got to put, LGBT flags up over the town hall. We've got real problems. This is managed decline, and it starts like that. It is those little seeds. And they grow and we ignore them. And then all of a sudden it hits us in the face. And we go, how did we get here? How did it get that bad? Because you chose to ignore it. I'll give you one more analogy before I'm done. Think about that like little niggle in the back of your throat and it's back of your mouth, right? And you're like, oh, you have something sweet and it's sort of like, oh, ouch, ouchies. And you ignore it. You should probably go to the dentist, but you don't. And then it goes on 6 weeks. Oh, yeah. Oh, nah, keep ignoring it. If you went to the dentist, you probably just could have got a clean and a little filling and it would have cost you a couple $100, but you keep going because why would you waste your time? 2 years later, you're flying to Sydney, you're going up in a plane and you have the most insane pain. It feels like your mouth is about to explode because unbeknownst to you, beneath the surface, a little abscess has grown and all that pressure is now making it so painful that you can't think of anything else but getting to the dentist the second you get off that plane. Ask me how I know that, by the way. All of a sudden, you end up in the dentist chair. He cuts open your tooth, and all of a sudden, there's this foul odor coming out because you've got rot in your face. And you could have solved that problem had you gone to the dentist at the first sign of the problem, but you wait until it's a root canal and you have to have that tooth pulled. That is the anecdote, right? Like that's the analogy that I'm running with. And so every chapter goes through this. The reason I bring this up is because we're sitting here going, oh, how did Venezuela get to Venezuela? How did Somalia get to Somalia? Because it's happening right now in Australia and you're choosing not to focus on it. We've even had the comments say, what's it got to do with Australia? Albo's not that bad. You're refusing to see the obvious. That's the problem because it's happening. This is decline.
The road to Venezuela is paved with good intentions. And as I've said before regarding, for example, the NDIS, which is definitely going to bankrupt Australia if we don't do something soon. If you think it's hard to be disabled, the bleeding hearts say, oh, don't you care about poor people? Don't you care about disabled people? You're always banging on about government spending. We should be a compassionate society. Well, that sounds nice. But if you think it's hard to be a poor person in a rich country, wait till you're a poor person in a bankrupt country. If you think it's hard to be disabled in a rich country, wait till you're disabled in a bankrupt country. Wait till you're disabled in Venezuela. See how you like it then. And so, unfortunately, we do need to be somewhat hard-hearted isn't the right expression, but we can't be led by the nose by every single sob story that's out there in Australia and wanting to spend more and more taxpayers' money fixing everyone else's problems, because unfortunately what that means is the problems continue because people don't learn how to fix them for themselves. So the problems persist and eventually the money runs out. So you've got all of the problems, but no money left. And that's when the suffering really kicks in. So the compassionate thing to do is actually what Javier Milei has done in Argentina, talk about a counterpoint to Venezuela, where he did the hard yards. He cut the government spending. He cut the welfare programs. You know what happened to poverty in Venezuela after he cut the welfare? It's gone down massively. I think it was 42% when he came in December 2 years ago. And it's now at, I believe, 28%, which is still very high, granted, but it's a massive decline in just 2 years. Why? Because he got the government out of the way of people's lives so that they could start to solve their own problems. If we live in a world and if we live in a country where the government solves everyone's problems, eventually it runs out of money because there's no end of problems. There's no shortage of problems. There's no shortage of need to spend more money, which means that bankruptcy is inevitable. It might take a long time, but if you keep walking in that direction, it happens. And then you've got all of the problems and no money to solve it with.
And we're seeing that with the NDIS. The NDIS now is we're out spending on that. We're spending more on the NDIS than we are our own defense force. And what that means is there's an incentive there to be on that. There's an incentive to be part of the NDIS. So anyone who has mild autism, ADHD, or any kind of mental health issue can now get government subsidies. And what that does is two things. One, it makes a whole bunch of people dependent on the state. And two, the people who have genuine problems, the people who do actually need the access to that, get kicked out. Because there's other people who become NDIS fraudsters who understand there's opportunity and there's ways to twist things and there's ways to extract more money. And that's what happens. And the thing is, and I saw this from a comment the other day and I saved it and I can't find it, but it was a girl who was basically saying, like, what do you mean? Like, I need the NDIS. I've got PTSD and I can't work. And I thought, I went onto her profile and believe it or not, the first picture on her profile was her getting a really big tattoo, like really big. Tattoos aren't cheap, man. Ask me how I know, right? She's getting a tattoo. The second picture on her profile was a haul that she'd done shopping at the thrift store. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when was the last time you went to the Salvos? It ain't cheap anymore.
They're not cheap.
Anyway,
they're not cheap.
Another one, her third photo was her out for drinks at a bar in Fitzroy. So this person can't work, but boy, can she spend some cash. Right? This is someone who's so incapable of working, but she seems to have no issues like participating in society. Like she's certainly contributing economically. And these are the kind of people that end up on the NDIS. Whereas you have people who are nonverbal, people who can't walk, people who are born without limbs, who have to fight through all this bureaucracy and all this paperwork to try and get any kind of help. And then you got people like that. Like, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but if you took away the incentive of being, disabled, and I say that, like, before anyone cuts that, the people who have, just be careful.
So,
the people who have weaponized the victim status of being disabled or mental health issues, take away that incentive, that all of a sudden, NDI spending goes straight down, doesn't it?
Yeah. And this is the problem. You always get more of what you incentivize. This is always true everywhere. Human beings respond to incentives. And people want to get upset. You were right there, Carla. To be kind of like, don't sort of clip this. People want to be outraged. Oh, you don't care about disabled people. No, I care about disabled people. But I know that if we create an incentive to be on a disability pension, then people who are this much disabled are going to claim that they're this much disabled because that gets them more benefits or gets them off the hook of having to work. We need to create incentives for people to do what they can. And if what they can do is not enough for them to be able to live some sort of a dignified life, then that's where charity needs to come in. And I believe charity starts at home, starts in your own family, then through civic organizations, not through the government. I'm a big supporter of charity, not welfare. So I don't believe that anyone should be starving in the gutter, but I believe we need to create a system that incentivizes people to do what they can do. Because everyone can do, well, almost everyone can do something. And if the incentive were... Yeah, most people can do something that is useful to society. And if the incentive was do what you can, and if there's a genuine shortfall, we'll get around you and make sure that you're okay. That would completely change the relationship between the recipient and the giver and would create a world where actually we're no longer just pouring money into a black hole. And people have been rightly making the, here we go, you two are so judgmental.
I was going to say, I need to address this comment. You two are so judgmental. And the follow-up comment was the tattoo artist could be their friend. That kind of mindset is exactly why we are. Stop making excuses. Stop always doing these mental gymnastics. Oh, well, you don't know. No, honey, we do know. We do know.
Was,
So take the
was the
rose-coloured glasses
bartender also
off,
her
mate.
friend?
You know,
Was
like,
the bartender her best mate as well?
and this is the thing. It's like, oh, you know, you just don't know. So you excuse everyone, okay? By that token, you just don't know. We do know. We do know, okay? Anyway, as we were. Should we wrap up
Yeah,
soon?
as we were. Yeah, we need to wrap up. But let me make one last point, because people have been correctly tying in the NDIS in Australia with the Somali fraud that's been uncovered in
yes.
Minnesota. And by the way, there are now investigations happening across the US, particularly in the blue states, because that's where most of the incentive is to rort the system. It looks as though Americans have spent hundreds of billions of dollars that has just been poured into a black hole on people who have done nothing productive for society, and in many cases have just sent the money overseas. And I think actually this is a really wonderful opportunity, because we've known that this has been happening, and I'm thrilled that it's coming to light, and I'm thrilled that people are as angry as they are about it in America, because Doge did not accomplish what it needed to accomplish. It did not provide the level of cuts that are needed. What was needed was a Mille level of just slash the government in half and then keep going, after that. Trump didn't do that. He tried to cut one program. He tried to cut forensically, strategically, making sure he was never cutting the wrong thing. And it's just too slow. It doesn't work. The cancer is too far advanced. And this Somali rort that has been revealed in Minnesota and is being discovered now across the US in all kinds of different contexts, it's not just Somalis, but in Minnesota, it was very much Somalis. This rort has got people angry. It's kind of the catalyst that's needed oftentimes for people to go, hang on, the Doge project, cutting spending, getting rid of waste, finding fraud, that wasn't some political game. This is real, and it's costing us in a really real and tangible way. And I don't know what it's going to take for that same outrage to occur in Australia. I don't know what it's going to take for us to actually, and I say us on that collective level, not the kinds of people that sit and watch podcasts like this one, but the average Joe Schmo who, let's be honest, about 70% of people can't even name the prime minister. Like, we need something to get those people angry. Hey,
that's a worry. I said that's a worry.
Well, yeah.
And you're right. I know you're right, but it's like when you say that, you know, you get so used to having these conversations that I have with you and all the oddies and other people. When I have these conversations with, you know, normies, their head splits open. They're like, wow. I'm like, oh, I forget that not everyone talks like this. I forget that not everyone gets like in the weeds. It's so true. But I guess this is what you know, this is what happens. And there's a lot of people. One thing I can't handle at the moment, and this is something I'm pushing back on, is a lot of well, I can't fix anything, so why should I care? And again, that's the whole crux of me writing chicken in the noodle aisle. That's the whole point. You there's plenty you can do. You know, it doesn't need, like, it's not protesting in the streets or like Viva Revolution or, you know, being a political dissident. It's about looking at the small things in your local area that you could do, and realizing that we actually have a lot more agency than we think, you know?
Yeah, 100%. All right. I'm mindful that I've got another early start tomorrow, and we're over the 2-hour mark, so we need to wind this up. But this has been another fun chat. And I tell you, it's not often that world events are as, in my opinion, from where I'm sitting, having been to Venezuela, as good as what I've just witnessed. I still have friends in Venezuela, as well as Venezuelans that have left Venezuela, and they are over the moon. I don't know a single Venezuelan who is opposed to what Trump did. They are all over the moon. And given that they are the ones who were suffering, I think we need to take their view of what happened very much into account.
I love this comment. If that's what you got out of 2.5 hours, mate, you're beyond our help. Like, seriously, that's the best you got? Did you listen to anything?
I feel like there was a higher than usual proportion of trolls this week, which is fine because they make lots of comments and that feeds the algorithm and more people discover our work. But I do feel like there was an influx of trolls today.
I can't tell. You idiots or you trolls. Look, the thing is, this is going to be a big year. We're going to be having a lot of these conversations, and people like that, like I said, your head's going to split open, because the reality is these systems can't be sustained any longer. They're all coming down. Look, I didn't bring up Somali today because I knew we'd go into it on Wednesday because there's just not enough time. And I really wanted to give a lot of time to Venezuela. But that, I believe, like Nick Shirley's video, just to say this really quickly, Nick Shirley's the independent journalist. He's a young kid who did all that, right?
Yep.
Before-
Who's just for those who have no idea, he's the one who actually did the legwork to uncover the fact that there were childcare centres that had no kids. They were claiming money from the government for looking after kids that they were not looking after. That's the fraud we're talking about.
So the power of this, and this is why, this is where I want to give you guys hope and why it's so important to, join our podcast, other people's podcasts, share it, because that's where the power is. So just to really illustrate this for you, Nick Shirley's video wasn't even 24 hours old and it hit 130 million views in under 24 hours. That's insane. I haven't looked at it recently to see where it's at. 125 million people. That's like what? 5 times the population of this country. That's half of America. One kid, and he's a non-drinker, non-drugs. He's a virgin. It's so pure. I love it, right? And he took it upon himself to investigate it. That one kid is the catalyst for now all of the people in the Democrat states to be like, hang on a minute, I'm going to go dig a little bit deeper. And then what happened?
100%.
It's a chain reaction. That's emboldened people here in Australia to go, hang on a minute, let's have a look at the NDIS. So just when you feel like you can't contribute and you can't do anything, think of Nick Shirley. 125 million views in under 24 hours from one kid. Imagine what we could all do if we all did something, right? Like collectively, there's a lot of power.
This is a great comment. And Nick Shirley started his social media channel when he was a teenager. Can't have that, can we?
Ooh.
No, we don't want more Nick Shirleys in the world. That's for sure.
Yeah. So look, Karen. And this is the thing, this is why I think people need to realize you're capable of more than you think. You don't have to wait for someone to be your leader. Reclaim some of that agency. And I think in your workshop and things coming up, we're going to be touching on that, aren't we?
Yes, there's a lot of good things coming up. Now's probably not the time, but I mean I've talked about it before. I'll touch on it very briefly. Well, firstly, my trip to Japan went extremely well. They've already invited me back. Sorry,
we'll talk about it on Wednesday. We'll talk about it on Wednesday.
Okay, we'll talk about it on Wednesday. But things are falling into place in an amazing way this year, and thanks to you guys and the support and the love. I went full time doing this at the start of last year. The channel's grown. You guys have supported me and made amazing things possible. And I tell you what you are enabling and what you are a part of in the coming years is phenomenal. It's already beginning to take shape. And I cannot say thank you enough, to be quite honest, even to the trolls.
And this is my first time. This is my year going full time in it as well. I've said no to all the clients. This is my we'll see what happens. So
you got to bite the bullet.
God help me.
Got to bite the bullet. All right, guys, coffee, buy some coffee. Support the channel, get on board. Will we have a venue for our first birthday party sometime soon, Carly? Because actually, hang on, we didn't acknowledge we are 1 year old.
We are 1 year old. Yay!
I mean, technically Wednesday, but we are 1 year old now.
We are 1 year old. We're grown-ups.
Which is awesome.
Crazy? Isn't it crazy how that happens? Yeah. Shit.
It's gone by very, very quickly. So thank you, Nate. Really appreciate it.
Is I'm going to be 40 in like 2 weeks. I'm going to be 40. 40.
Yeah,
that sounds like a war crime.
Couldn't you have organized your birthday party up here instead of making me drag my sorry ass down to Melbourne again?
Ew, no.
Can't you just plan your life around me, Carly? Come on.
All
right, guys, we got to get out of here. Thank you so much for joining us. There's 1,303 of you still watching. What is it? It's nearly 10 o'clock at night. Thank you guys for the love and the support. Really appreciate it. We couldn't do.
Please follow the Oddcast on YouTube.
Yes.
Subscribe.
Yes.
Sign up to Ko-fi. All the things.
Share, like, do all the things, and we will see you on Wednesday night. Thanks for the love, everybody. Bye.